This hearing is being live streamed. My name is Councillor Marie-Therese Rossi and I will be chairing the meeting. The committee for this hearing comprises Councillor Laura Barnes and Councillor Claire Simmons. We are joined by Fiona Johnson from the licensing team, Lindsay Lemazurier, our legal officer. Also with us is our committee officer, Holly Weaver. She is supported by Jerome Traherne and Yusuf Ulwal. Before we start hearing this case, just a few ground rules. Please keep your microphones on mute until you are invited to speak, as only 2 microphones can be used at any one time. And please make sure mobile phones are on silent. The case before us today is to grant a licence for formerly Eclipse 113 Walton Street, London, SW3 2HP. I confirm that I have no declaration of interest to make regarding this item. Do other members have any declarations? Councillor Barnes? Councillor Simmons? Thank you. For clarity, I will outline the procedure of the meeting, which has already been circulated with the papers. First, the licensing officer, Ms. Johnson, will give a brief outline of the application. Ms. Johnson, can you confirm your attendance? Yes?
Good morning, all, and present, Chair.
I will then ask the applicant, Mr. Nigel Drummond, to present his submission. He will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes to do so. Please could you confirm your attendance, Mr. Drummond? Okay. Then questions will be asked by members of the committee and the legal advisor of the applicant. Then questions may be asked by the responsible authority of the applicant. Then questions may be asked by the objectors of the applicant. Next, the first responsible authority, the police, PC Ian Davies, will present his submission. He will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes to do so. PC Davies, could you confirm your attendance? Okay, before people speak, there's a button in front of them that you press to speak, and then the microphone has like a red ring round it to show that it's on. Anyway, then questions will be asked by members of the committee and the legal advisor of the police. Then questions will be asked by the applicant of the police. Then questions will be asked by noise and nuisance of the police. Then questions may be asked by objectors of the police. Next, the second responsible authority, noise and nuisance, Mr. Keith Mahaffey, will present his submission. He will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes to do so. Mr. Mahaffey, can you confirm your...
Good morning, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Then questions will be asked by members of the committee and the legal advisor of noise nuisance. Then questions may be asked by the applicant of noise nuisance. Then questions may be asked by the police of noise nuisance, and then questions may be asked by the objectors of noise nuisance. Next, the objectors, Sarah Heaton, Alan Brearley, Jenny Mills and Andrea Sharp will present their objections. They will have up to a maximum of 10 minutes each to do so.
And Philippa Briley's here as well.
And Philippa Briley. Please could you all confirm your attendance? Thank you.
Yes, I confirm, but we also spoke with governance yesterday, and I was told that it was quite okay for Anthony Townsend, who is sitting next to me, to also contribute.
Okay.
He is relevant because he lives in Don Place,
Okay.
and is part of Walton Street Residents Association.
Is he a registered objector?
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Then questions will be asked by members of the committee and the legal advisor of the objectors. Then questions may be asked by the responsible authorities of the objectors. Then questions may be asked by the applicant of the objectors. After this, we will ask our legal officer, Ms. Le Mesurier, to deal with any further questions she may have, and then she will lead on to the draft conditions session. The list of potential conditions has been circulated to all of the parties prior to the hearing.
I'm present.
Okay. And then finally, we will turn to the governance team to see if any issues have been raised that we need to consider. There will be no summing up and the meeting will end. I would like to remind everyone that the committee has read the papers which comprise the main pack and the additional submissions from the applicant that was circulated yesterday to the parties. So there is no need to repeat their content, but please do draw our attention to certain points and pages. Let's get going. Ms. Johnson, please can you outline the case for us and advise if there has been any additional documentation received.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning all again. Today's application has been submitted by Prohibition Partners Limited for the grant of a premises licence in respect of 113 Walton Street, London SW3 2HP. The premises previously traded as a lounge bar, Eclipse, on the ground floor only, with a premises licence which lapsed on the 15th of June 2021. The lapsed licence permitted a number of licensable activities, and a summary of this can be found on page 5 of today's main committee bundle. The applicant has stated that the premises will operate as a bar and restaurant and has applied for the grant of a new premises licence for the ground floor, first and second floors. A summary of the activities previously allowed on the now lapsed licence and those proposed can be found on pages 6 and 7 of today's main committee bundle. I can confirm that this application has attracted 27 representations in total, 26 opposing the application and 1 in support. 2 of the representations opposing the application have been received from the police and environmental health, who are deemed responsible authorities. A summary of their representations can be found on pages 9 to 15 of today's bundle, and their full representations can be found at appendices D and E respectively. Of the additional 24 representations opposing the application, one is from Ward Councillors Idris, Wheel and McVeigh, and 3 are from local residents group. The Board of Marlborough Knightsbridge Company Limited, Milner Street Area Residents Association and Walton Street Residents Association. The contents of these 24 representations have been summarised on pages 16 to 18 of today's main bundle, and the full representations can be found at Appendix F. The representation in support of the application has also been summarised on page 18 of the bundle, and the full letter of support can be found at Appendix G. Council records show that at the time this report was written, the premises had received no noise complaints over the preceding 24-month period. The last complaint was recorded in July 2018 and related to noise from waste and recycling collections between 1:30 a.m. and 2 o'clock a.m. In the past year, no temporary event notices have been submitted. There are no planning restrictions or conditions which the subcommittee should be aware of, and a copy of the planning officer's email is attached as Appendix H. A number of additional documents were circulated by email yesterday at 10:31. With your permission, Chair, can I just check that everyone is in receipt of these documents?
Yes, fine.
Okay, I'll now proceed to go through the documents. So the first one was a plan showing the ground floor, and it was titled Ground Floor Signage, which looks like this. The second document was entitled First Floor Signage, which looks like this. There's also one for the second floor signage. There's also a document showing the front elevation. A document entitled Notes and Cover Letter, which the front page looks like this. There was also a copy of the licence that was issued in January 2020 with a letter on the front. A report from an independent licensing consultant. A dispersal and external management plan. And another document which was circulated yesterday, which was draft suggested conditions. And that concludes my summary, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Johnson. Now we will go to the applicant. Mr Drummond, would you, could you advise if there have been any amendments to your application?
I'm sorry, can I go through the amendments?
I'm asking if you've changed the application.
No, we haven't changed the application.
Okay. So please, can you now present your submission? You have up to 10 minutes to do so, and then we will ask questions of you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Ms Chairman. Ms Johnson has covered the key documents, so I assume we'll be going through some of the key details in those during the meeting today. What I intended to do initially was just do a little bit of background on myself and the team, and then walk through the cover letter, which covers some of the key points in our application. As a kind of overall introduction. So my name is Nigel Drummond. I'm the lead applicant. We have a very experienced team that's proposed to run the premises, which I can go through a little bit later. I'm very well, I know the borough very well. I was born in Chelsea. All 6 of my children were born in Chelsea Westminster Hospital. My entire family lives within a quarter of a mile of the proposed premises. So it's an area that I know very well. My entire family lives very close by. So it's something I care about very much. The premise itself has been vacant for a couple of years, but previously held a license that you're aware of. And that license was renewed without any objections only just over 2 years ago. However, we are proposing something that's quite fundamentally different from the previous premises that was operating their Eclipse. So I'm going to go through some of the key points, and hopefully that'll give you a bit of an overview. So firstly, the reason we're proposing to use the 3 floors, the total space we're proposing is smaller than the previous location, which was spread on 2 buildings on the ground floor. It had issues because almost all the patrons on the previous location were within 5 meters of the street, so you had a lot of street noise. And none of the building was sound insulated. All the windows were single pane. And there was a skylight of 9 meters, which was completely uninsulated, which had a lot of noise egress. So all of these issues are being addressed. Also, the previous location had 90% of people were standing. We're proposing 80% of people will be sitting, and we're serving food throughout, which previously was not being served. So it's a fundamental different application from the previous premises. So the intention is to get people up into the building and away from the street area, and also to add smoking terraces on the back, so people aren't smoking on the street during the hours of controlled hours. And we work closely with the police and environmental health to reduce those hours and try to align them with something we think would be hopefully acceptable to residents. And we're very sensitive to those concerns. So the idea is to have a restaurant on the top floor serving food throughout the building, and then the other floors are primarily seated. The first floor would be on art gallery. We have art that's for sale, 100% seated area. Top floor also entirely seated, and the ground floor is primarily seated, but it's the main bar area. But again, we're trying to keep people away from the street and move them to the back. Based on feedback, well, our original plans and additional feedback from the noise and nuisance team, we're planning to fully noise insulate the entire building, both the external walls and between the floors. Replace the currently open skylights and open windows with sealed units to further reduce noise and nuisance. And to, as we've mentioned before, try to keep people away from the street level and in the building. That's kind of general overall layout. And we've been very sensitive to feedback, both from residents, from the police, from noise and nuisance team, who've been extremely helpful. We've had a lot of meetings on site and by phone with the different teams. And a lot of those changes are captured in the proposed conditions, where we're making changes to dispersion, security, usage, hours, and access during the day, and adding things such as an acoustic lobby, so that when the doors are open to the premises, there's an acoustic buffer between the street and the main areas, and that's based on feedback from the police. We already have basic planning approved by RBKC. In fact, the council's been very supportive of the application. Generally, their feeling is there are not enough, or is a declining number of venues within the Royal Borough, and as long as the locations are being done to a sufficient and high quality, which is what we're planning to do here. This is not intended to be a kind of destination place. It's for local residents. It's a quiet bar with extensive seating, where people can bring their friends and family during the day, or they can, rather than going up into Mayfair, they can come and have a drink with friends in the evening. It's not intended to be a major destination. And as part of that planning approval, we're reinstating a number of the features. So the building is currently in quite poor condition, very poor condition, in fact. It's caused damage to both neighbouring properties on both sides. We have letters of support from both landlords, both on 2 buildings either side of the building, to get remediation work done. And as part of the design, we're actually reinstating all the front features, which includes adding back architraves, original features around the windows, fixing all the access points, and also adding soundproofing. And that's part of the approved application. We've had significant feedback from the police, and we've met with Ian previously on several occasions. And based on that feedback, the police have given us a number of conditions, and we've agreed to comply with all of them. All of them, 100%. And that includes everything from security hours, body cams, having additional age verification on the door, access controls, and obviously the dispersion plan, which we've included in the pack of materials for today, which allows us to get people out of the building efficiently over almost 2 hours, actually, 1.5 to 2 hours, based on proposed conditions, which we think is best practice. We also commissioned an independent report by Adrian Studd, who's well known to Ian, who, and the conclusions of those I'll go through in a second, but he's generally very supportive. He did a number of investigations on several evenings on Wharton Street, checking parking, number of people on the street, access issues and so on. And it's worth reiterating, we're actually at the Draycott Avenue end of Wharton Street. So we're quite close to Draycott Avenue, which is, as you know, is being pedestrianised. So there's a lot of access, it's easier for people to leave the bar and actually go out through Draycott Avenue, also out through Brompton Road. And we have additional parking, which I'll come on to in a second. So we have both 2 taxi bays directly outside the location, and we're also working with Chelsea Cloisters to provide valet parking and other off-street parking to move parking away from the venue. And that's also part of our plan. So we're complying with all complete police requirements. We've also got significant feedback from Keith and the team at Noise and Nuisance, and also Melanie and others. And based on that, we've included a number of changes in the proposed conditions. These include things like staggering closing of the building. So rather than the entire building closing at one time, we're proposing to close it from the top down. So basically, we start to empty the building over time, which gives us a longer window to manage dispersion and to make sure that we can control the noise of people leaving the building. So that's detailed in the proposed conditions. We've also added the acoustic lobby, which I mentioned previously, and other changes, primarily around sound insulation, control of entry, re-entry, control of people on the streets, addition of rear areas, take people away from the street and take them up into the building to reduce noise on the street, and other changes that were covered in proposed conditions. We have seen the representations from the residents. It was a little surprising, given the fact that the license, the full license, and we're proposing to modify the license, actually reduce hours and so on in many ways. But the license was reapproved only just over 2 years ago without any objections. But it was very interesting to see the different comments from residents, and we've tried to incorporate all of that feedback into proposed conditions. And we're confident that we have covered everything. But it'd be interesting to get feedback from residents today and see if we can be clear on what we're proposing and how we're addressing the concerns that at least we're aware of so far. But we're looking forward to getting additional feedback. The independent report is quite relevant, I think, here. This report wasn't written for us. It was written for the benefit of the subcommittee. this committee. It's very much not, it covers from Adrian, who is a very notable and well-known person, both obviously former policeman, but very well known within the kind of quality and bar management, management of bars and security, very well known. And I'm going to just touch on a few key points from his report. You have the full report. But in summary, he mentioned that with the change to primarily seated, over 80% of seated customers, and the service of alcohol primarily by waitress service rather than being bar service, it ensures that alcohol consumption is largely seated and ancillary to substantial food available. So we are planning to have a full kitchen in the facility and food available to all patrons. He also mentioned there is not currently an issue with alcohol-related crime on the street. As confirmed by the police, there's no additional policing or police priorities that have changed on Walton Street, so currently there's no issue. He also did a review in detail, I'm not going to go through it now, but it's covered in the document, detailed review of people on the street, noise levels during the evening up till 2 a.m. in the morning, and parking, and confirmed there's sufficient parking, and that our plans are compliant with the policies of the council. As I mentioned, there are 2 dedicated taxi drop-off and pick-up points directly outside the location. There's significant public transport very close by, and we're also working with Chelsea Cloisters just around the corner on Valley Parking. So in his view, if this application is approved, the proposed premises will operate in a manner that fully supports the licensing objectives. But of course, look forward to your questions or comments on his report. And the final thing I wanted to cover was the management team. So it's taken us quite a while. We're trying to do a venue here, or we are doing a venue here, which is intended to be done to a very high level, that's suitable for local residents and something that people locally would like to use regularly, and an alternative to going up to Mayfair and members clubs. We're also obviously creating a lot of local employment, between 20 and 25 jobs in the venue as well, which helps support local employment and generally supports the area. The management team we have over 75 years of combined experience of general management, operating bars and facilities both in Chelsea, Mayfair and all other areas of London. They include opening Hakkasan restaurants. We've got the former general manager of Hakkasan, got former managers and general managers from some of the notable bars in London, including Chiltern Firehouse and others. So it's really done to a very high level. It took us a long time to find it, over a year to find that team to put it together. But we're confident we've got, if not the best team in London, one of the very best teams to operate the facilities. And they very much value the support of local residents, of course, and the police. It's something we take very seriously. So overall, we hope that, given the support we have, and I'm not going to run through all the documents because Ms. Johnson's already covered them, but we hope you'll support the application.
Thank you, Mr. Drummond. So I'll take questions from the committee first, and I will start with one question. Could you outline the measures you have taken to soundproof the building to make sure that the buildings either side are not disturbed by noise? Thank you.
Yes, so both buildings either side are actually commercial buildings. There's no residential neighbouring us on any floor. All floors are commercial and currently only operate up till 6 p.m. But we always intended to replace the frontage. It's a conservation area, so we can't replace the sash windows, but we can sound insulate them. And within the building itself, the entire building has been ripped out. Everything's been taken back down to the brickwork. We're repairing the brickwork and we're adding sound and thermal insulation to all the walls. So the external walls, both on the sides, the front and back. As I mentioned, the skylights currently, all the existing windows and doors are single pane, not sound insulated. We're upgrading everything, and there's a very large 9 square meter skylight on the roof at the back that's basically completely open. There's no sound control at all. We're removing that entirely and putting a sealed double glazed unit. So the ceilings are going to be insulated, all the floor between each floor is going to be insulated, the front and the back of the building, and all the doors and the windows themselves will be double glazed. And we're being advised by an acoustic engineer and a sound engineer. The sound engineer who's managing the sound system, we've agreed, we always intend to do this anyway, but we're also agreeing to comply with overall noise limiting system. So there are microphones within the building So the entire building can be turned down. So if anything is, it means that all the sound levels can be controlled. And as it gets later in the evening, you can turn it down during the evening to further reduce any noise. So both on the sound side, in terms of sound design, sound control, volume control, and actually passive insulation, we think the plan we've put together is best in class, plus the acoustic lobby. So as you come in, you're going between two doors, which are sound insulated, so the noise isn't coming directly off the street, directly off the street into the bar or vice versa. We're creating a buffer zone as part of that.
Thank you. Councillor Burns?
Thanks, Chair. I have a two-parter. One, how do you intend to minimise the sound on the terraces? And also, you did mention reducing the hours to what would that be? Because you mentioned something that you would be willing to reduce the hours. So those two I'm quite interested in. And one other thing, actually. It seems like it's slightly more of a restaurant. What kind of cuisine, just on the back of that? Thanks.
Okay, so I think there are three questions. So firstly on the rear terraces. So the idea here is, okay, if we didn't have the terraces, then we'd have people smoking on the street in front of the venue. So the idea is for us to try to reduce some people on the street, so we're not interfering with people passing up and down the street, get them off the street, move them to the back. So that's the first intent. Originally, the idea was to align the hours for those terraces with the opening hours, but based on feedback from the police and noise and nuisance, we're reducing those hours. So it's actually in the proposed conditions that we have, there are two terraces actually. The lower one is only usable until 7 p.m. and the upper one is only open till, I think, 10 p.m. And we're also limiting the number of people that can be on the terrace and no drinks on the terrace either. So we've complied with we've gone through this discussion with the police and noise, and we've effectively accepted all of their conditions. So we still think it's significantly better for residents than having people out on the street in the front of the place. But we are trying to manage it very carefully in terms of number of people on the terrace and the hours that we're operating. The question on the food. So it's quite a small venue overall. It doesn't support a huge number of people. The intention on the top floor is to use it as a kind of chef's kitchen. So this is a concept that you have quite commonly in the US, where you have people sitting effectively with the chefs. So because the top floor is not very large, the idea is we'll have an open kitchen that seats 12 to 14 people. That kitchen can also serve the other floors too. But the idea is to have rotating chefs. So we've partnered with a good friend of mine who runs a luxury food. It's kind of a professional industry food blog, I guess you'd call it. So she works with 680, I think, Michelin-starred chefs and sous chefs. Typically, when these chefs want to start their own restaurants, so say, for example, they're working for a famous chef, they're the main sous chef in a restaurant, they might want to do their own venture. They want to find locations where they can come and try things out for 4, 6, 8 weeks, see if their concept works, and based on that, they can then open a venue. So working with her, she has access to over 600 chefs. The idea is to have rotating chefs. These are all Michelin-starred chefs. Typically, people are going to become very famous in the near future, but for now, they're not. So the idea is to have a standard kitchen where people can come in for 2 months, do a kind of pop-up and rotate it, and have different interesting chefs coming through to keep it interesting for local residents and make it something that's appealing locally so people want to come and try it out. But it's quite small. As I say, you can only seat 12, 14 people at most, probably 12, depends on layout. And that's the concept. So very high-end, visiting chefs, set menu, fixed menu on each day. Very simple concept, but done to a very high level. I feel like I missed one of your questions.
The other one was you were flexible on the hours.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So this is based on feedback. So despite the fact the license was renewed recently for the whole, for the ground floor, we propose, and this is based on, it ties into the dispersion plan. So it's actually in the proposed conditions. I don't know if you have it handy, but there's a coloured, on the proposed conditions, there's a little table at the top of it. And it suggests that we were proposing, subject to approval, that we'd close the building from the top down. So the top floor we'd stop serving alcohol at midnight, rather than 1. and then the floor below at 12:30, and then the floor below at 1, which is the current license. So effectively, we'd be emptying the building out over an hour and a half, basically. So we effectively close the top floor, bring everyone down, close the first floor, bring everyone down, and then as people are leaving, manage them out onto the street, kind of over that period, over an hour and a half. So that's covered in the proposed conditions.
Councillor Simmons.
Thank you. Could we just confirm, I think I understood you correctly when you said that there's no residential adjoining the property on either side at any height?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank
And
you.
actually, one of the things we did when we first were looking at taking the lease, we met with, I personally and the team, we went along the street both sides. We know the landlords both sides extremely well because we've done obviously party wall agreements with them on the work. It's entirely commercial both sides. Actually, 3 buildings both sides, all commercial. Opposite's entirely commercial. Behind the building, it's primarily commercial. You've got Daphne's restaurant that comes all the way behind. And we went down and rang a lot of the doors on Don Place and also on Walton Street. I've personally met with more than 40 local residents and also business owners on the street, mostly about 6-7 months ago when we were going through the planning and talking to them about what we're looking to do. And generally we're very supportive. A number of them offered to come today, but because only people in opposition are allowed to speak, it didn't seem worthwhile them coming, but I had quite a lot of people offered to come, including the landlords on both sides, so 115 and 111. But yes, it's entirely commercial.
Thank you. And also, I was wondering, what is the time frame on the acoustic works that you're planning? Do
Well,
you have a time scale?
Yeah, so basically it's part of the overall construction. So at the moment we're pausing construction subject to getting the license approved and then finalising planning. So as part of the license we're making some changes to the design, like the acoustic design and everything else. So once we've got the license agreed and we know exactly what we're working with, we'll finalise the plans, and the acoustic work is actually the next step. So all the internal demolition, all the removal of all the rotten wood and rotten roofs and all the internal walls has already been done. So the next step is actually to do the soundproofing and acoustic work. That would happen basically immediately over the next, it's going to take about 6 weeks, and then they can do all the construction afterwards.
Thank you. And finally, I wonder if you could just clarify for me. You mentioned on the second floor terrace for people to smoke there so that they are not smoking outside on the ground floor
Well, it's
in the street. But I can see that we do have a condition to say that actually, in fact, on the ground floor at the street, there will be no more than 10 people smoking outside. So in practice, it may well be both. Am I correct?
Well, I think that's there because that was added because we are planning to close the rear terraces while the building is still open. So obviously once those are closed, people have nowhere else to go.
Sure.
So either you could extend the hours on the rear terraces, which there was opposition to, or we could allow people to go back down to the street. So it's it's a trade-off. The intention is not to do both at the same time. No, we'd ask people to use the smoking terraces, but once they're closed, they'll have no option but to use the street, which is why originally we suggested having the hours aligned for the terraces. But it was felt that might cause more inconvenience to neighbours, so we therefore reduced the hours on the terraces.
Thank you.
Mr. Drummond, one last thing. Could you help me with the maths? You say on the second floor there would be 12 to 14 people. Somewhere I've read in the pack the capacity is 120 people. So where are the other people going to go? There's some room for sitting down on the first floor. So you say also that 80% will be sitting. So could you explain that a bit further?
Yes, so the intention is to have extend. If you look at the plans, I mean they're being updated a little bit at the moment because we're adding things like the acoustic lobby. But the intention is to have significant seating on the ground floor, which you can see on the draft plan. The first floor is entirely seated. Is 100% seated. So but obviously people will be coming up and down through the building. The 120 is based on, we've been working quite closely with the fire team and building control. The 120 is the maximum theoretical limit. In practice, we will never get up to 120 but we are working on basically both a fire plan and a noise suppression plan. But the current theoretically approved numbers, if I remember correctly, are 70 on the ground floor, which were, previously they used to have 140 on the ground floor, to give you a comparison. So 70 on the ground floor, 30 on the first floor, and 20 maximum on the second floor, which include people sitting, people walking up and down the building, people using the bathrooms, potentially people on the terrace. But obviously it's being managed. So the idea is we have management of each floor, and we're controlling people moving up and down through the building.
Okay, thank you.
If that makes sense.
Committee, any further questions? So I will go to Lindsay, our legal advisor. She has some questions for.
Thank you. Sorry, in relation to the ground floor, is there going to be seating and standing, did you say? Or was it primarily standing because it's a bar? Sorry, I wasn't clear.
It's primarily seated. So if you, I don't know if you have it there, but there's a indicative plan. So the idea is there's seating at the front, all around the bar. There's seating on all along the walls, and the whole half of the floor, the back, has seating all the way around it, and additional tables.
So where will there be standing then?
So standing is mostly people ordering at the bar, or coming in and out, leaving and coming in, that kind of thing. So you have people moving through the facility that will be standing, but most people will be sitting.
Okay.
That's why we're saying 80% standing, because you have 20% of people kind of moving around or ordering or going up to the floor, using the bathrooms, wherever it might be, just in practice.
Okay, so ground floor primarily seated, but standing at the bar and people coming in and out.
Yes, and then the first floor almost entirely seated, and the top floor almost entirely seated.
Oh, right, okay, so I was under the assumption that the first and second floor were all seated, not...
Yeah, when I say primarily, what I mean is there'll be people seated, but obviously people moving up, using the bathrooms.
Okay, but if they want to be served alcohol, then
Yeah,
they've got
some
to be
people will be
seated
in
with
motion,
waitress
yeah.
service.
Yeah,
Okay.
but the intention is people are sitting down, having table service.
Okay. When do you envisage opening?
Well, I mean, we've been waiting for, because of the delay on the license, we've been waiting to get the license approved to get going. The demolition's been finished, the planning's been done, so we're just waiting to get started on the work. We anticipate the works will take approximately 4 months, and we already have the team to operate the location. So and we have the builders ready, and we already have the basic design done. So hopefully, if things go well, we'll be opening in kind of April time.
April?
Yeah.
Okay, and in relation to... So you said either side's commercial?
Yes.
And opposites primarily commercial?
Directly in front's commercial, and primarily behind is commercial too.
Oh, so I'm interested in directly behind the property where the terraces are, backing onto Don Place. Can you tell me what the layout of the land is there?
You have Daphne's Restaurant. So if you're looking at the back of the... Okay, so both sides are commercial.
Yep.
All the buildings directly in front are all commercial. On the back, you've got Daphne's Restaurant, which comes, if you imagine the back of the building, 2/3 of the back of the building is Daphne's
And that's
Restaurant.
on Draycott Avenue, isn't it? So you're
Yes.
here, then Daphne's is on
Avenue,
Draycott,
exactly.
and
It
then
comes
Don...
exactly. So we're quite close to Draycott Avenue. We're down at that end of Walton Street. We're quite close to.
So you're attached to Daphne's then?
Yeah. So
effectively.
we actually directly attach the back of Daphne's, and we've spoken to the. Yeah, and I mentioned the tube. Yeah. So we. Yeah, it's worth mentioning. Yeah. So we directly abut onto Daphne's.
Daphne's, okay.
And we've already agreed, as I mentioned to you, we're going to be doing soundproofing anyway, but we already worked with Daphne's. They actually have some existing damage on their rear wall. We're going to repair the wall and put the soundproofing into that rear wall as well. And then there's an office, and then there's some residential, but the residential is next to the train tracks.
On top, sorry, you're talking about on top of Daphne's now?
No, this is behind. So if you imagine, if you're looking at the back of the building, your Daphne's comes in this way. For about
Yep.
2/3 of the rear is Daphne's. Then there's an office building, and then some residential over on this side, but it's abutting the train track. So the building is above the train track, open train tracks. So
Okay.
one of the things we've done is, and one of the reasons why we believe we have it's reasonable to do the rear terraces, we actually did a sound report. We had a sound engineer for 2 weeks, had microphones out on the roof area, and the ambient noise is significantly louder than two people talking, because you've got the train tracks coming past.
Is that underneath the underground?
No, it's open.
It's open.
I haven't included a picture with me, but if you're on the back of the building, the open train tracks is alongside the building, so you can hear the train all day. And if you're outside in the back, you hear the trains, and the trains are running, till 12:30.
And I'm interested in the buildings directly behind, obviously, where the terraces are. What's directly behind?
Directly behind is Daphne's and an office building. They use it for office space. It's a built house, but they use it for offices. Well, at least when I spoke to them.
And what about Don Place? Because Daphne's is on Draycott Avenue.
That is on Don Place.
Oh, right, okay, sorry.
So you've got Draycott Avenue on this side, Daphne's coming into the back, and then you can see the back of Don Place over here.
Okay.
On this side.
So
And
is
then
there any
train tracks.
residential overlooking the terraces? That's what I'm keen
It's
to
a
know.
mixture. It's mostly residential, but some of them are also used as offices. So the ones behind us is used as an office, apparently.
So some residential overlook terraces as well as offices. Okay.
Yeah, and the residential is next to the train track. The one
Okay.
I'm 99% sure because I've spoken to the lady, but the one that's directly next to the train tracks is residential, I believe.
Okay, so my next question is, your on sales relate to inside the building, and it's just up to, not including the forecourt area. What you've applied for off sales, what are the off sales for? Will you be doing like a Deliveroo kind of thing? Is it for people to come in and buy alcohol and take it away? I'm keen to know what exactly the off sales is for.
To be honest with you, that's just a continuation of the existing license. We don't have any specific plans for off sales at all. And as you mentioned, just on the rear terraces point, so as part of the feedback, as I mentioned, the terraces plan to get people off the street, which should be a net benefit. We're also restricting hours, and people can't drink on the terraces either, and it's next to the train tracks. But yeah, there's no plans currently to do off-license sales from
And
the
not
venue.
to have Deliveroo either.
That's not part of our plans, no, but it's
No.
part of the existing license. It's kind of standard terms on the license, typically.
Okay. No, I think that's it. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now I will turn to the police. Would you have any questions for the applicant?
No questions, Chair.
Mr. Mahaffey, any questions?
Yes. Can you hear me, madam? One of the things, would you accept that the main issue here is not the containment of sound inside the premises, because it can be dealt with technically through design, but it will be the noise from people departing the premises up to 1:30 in the morning and the impact that will have on the neighbouring residents?
So, Keith, do you want me to address the...
I said, would you accept...
Sorry, Keith, I wasn't sure what the question was.
I said, would you accept that the main issue here is not the containment of sound inside the premises? It is a noise of people departing the premises late in the morning.
I mean, obviously, we're aware that this is a concern. As I mentioned, we've done two things to address that concern. One is we commissioned the independent report, which suggests that this can be managed and should not be an issue for the street or for meeting the requirements of the license. And secondly, we proposed a staggered closing plan that we can get more than half the people out of the facility earlier than the time that Keith mentioned. So we believe that the proposal we have addresses these concerns.
My second question basically relates to the fact that there are two other premises on Walton Street. We have Zeffy's and we also have Jack's. What is your view with regards to, in your dispersal management plan, how are you going to address the additional people leaving at 1 o'clock when the other premises closes?
So again, this is covered in both in the independent report and in the dispersal plan we've published. So the number of people actually leaving other venues is actually quite staggered already. And if you read the independent report, it's the belief of Adrian that we shouldn't have, given the fact we will be closing early on, having people leaving earlier anyway, and it's over a longer period of time, we shouldn't have any impact on the total traffic on the street. And then the dispersal plan, it's basically our active way of managing that. So helping people get out of the venue, helping people get valet parking, getting their cars, arranging taxis for people. So just in general, based on the independent review, the view is that the impact we will have on the street will be negligible. And then the plan we have in place, which is our active management plan, we believe we can also help manage that efficiently to further reduce the risk of it becoming an issue.
But you would accept that there are a further 90 people leaving the premises at 1 o'clock in the morning, after 1 o'clock in the morning, because that's when your ground floor will be vacated. and basically how are you going to deal with those additional 90 people that are coming out of your premises into Walton Street, along with 120 people coming out of Jack's and 120 people coming out of Zeffie's? We're going to have something in the region of nearly 270 people leaving the premises, leaving these premises, over 310 people leaving these premises that time as a worst case scenario. And how is that going to be managed?
I can only really refer you to the independent report, because that's just not the case. So based on somebody who actually went down the street and was monitoring people leaving the buildings, they're actually quite staggered. So it's not like 150 people are leaving at 1 a.m. Quite the opposite. I think if you read the report, they only had, I think, 10 people were leaving after 12:30 from other venues. But I don't want to read the whole report now. But I think you're assuming a worst case scenario, which demonstrably apparently isn't the case, because based on people actually physically being there and observing people leaving, the pattern is much more spread out. And even on our plan right now, the worst case scenario would be 70 people, but they'd be leaving over half an hour.
But the worst case scenarios do happen.
Right, but it'd be 70 people over half an hour. It wouldn't be 90 people leaving at one time.
But that's your ground floor capacity, 90 people. 90 people can leave altogether at the same time. You're coming out from their premises into a residential area at midnight, and
Mr. Mahaffey, would it be possible to speak up a bit? We're not hearing everything.
Sorry, madam,
Thank
I
you.
have problems with my voice at the moment. But you're saying that 90 additional people into the street is not going to cause a problem. Is that correct?
Well, first of all, I'm not quite sure why you're coming up with 90 people, but I'm not expressing anything at all. I'm saying that an independent report done by Adrian, who's a very knowledgeable person, says it's not a problem.
I think we'll leave it at that, madam. Thank you.
But I mean, specifically, he did a study looking at people leaving the different venues on the street, parking, access, and everything else. And I'm not quite sure we're coming up with 90, because even on our plans, the worst case scenario would be 70 over half an hour to an hour, not 90 at one time. So I'm not quite sure where the 90 comes from. But anyway, I can only really refer you to the independent report. The reason we wanted to get an independent report, and the reason why we paid for that, and again, it's not done for us, it's done for the benefit of the subcommittee, is I think generally I have views of things, residents have views of things. We wanted to get somebody who can actually physically go there and see what's really happening. So rather than being kind of anecdotal evidence or anything else, it's actually a detailed report from Adrian that you've got in your pack that covers the other venues, when people are leaving, what license they have, how it affected access on the street, how it affected parking, how it affected taxis. It's all covered, and its conclusions are the license we're applying for would be compliant with the objectives of the committee. So I can only recommend that people read that. I'm sure you read it already, but perhaps we read the conclusions, because I think they're quite consistent.
Thank you. Mr. Mahaffey, have you any more questions?
Yes, I wouldn't mind him explaining how he's going to comply with the midnight policy in the statement of licensing policy. Basically to be able to demonstrate to you that in the management and operation of the premises that he will not create a material impact on neighbouring residents, for you to basically permit licences to be granted after midnight.
Would you like to ask a question?
Thank you, Chair. It's just to clarify something. So the applicants have produced an additional document entitled Updated List of Possible Conditions, and on it there's a table depicting the capacity of each floor. However, in producing your case, I think you mentioned that the ground floor would have 70 capacity, first floor 30 and the second floor 20, but those figures are actually different than the ones on a document. So I just wanted to know if you could just confirm which are the correct figures. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the latest version is 70, 30, 20. It's based on the seating plan. The new plan we have actually moves the staircase further back, so we can actually have more people sitting on the first floor. So we've increased it from 20 to 30. So the latest one is 70, 30, 20. Yes. So this is a slightly older version, but in total the numbers are the same.
Okay, and could you just also clarify point 3 on the conditions, because it says 80 on the ground floor, 30 on the first floor, 20, which comes up to 130.
Sorry, that's actually a typo, so it
Yeah.
should be 70, 30, 20.
Okay,
Thank
right,
you, thanks
thank
for
you.
catching that. Apologies. Yeah, this is something that we were changing literally last week with the designer.
Now turn to the objectors. Ms Johnson, could you turn your mic off? Thank you. Who would like to ask a question? Your name is, sorry,
Jenny Mills.
Jenny Mills. You go first.
Yes. There are a number of points of clarification I would appreciate at you addressing, Mr. Drummond. The first thing is, you said that you've met with everybody involved in this application over a long period of time. I noticed from the documents that came through yesterday that Jan Seward from RBKC wrote to you in January 2020 and suggested that you contact the Residents Association and gave you the details. We heard nothing from you until the application came up.
Excuse me, this is a time for questions.
Yes, well, my
you will
question
get to make
is-
your submission later on, so if you could ask a question, please.
Well, my question is, why did the applicant not meet with the residents and discuss with the residents? And I'm sorry, meeting people on the street doesn't count as meeting with Residents Association, whether Walton Street or Missara or any of the other local Residents Association. So the question is, why did you not contact us?
No, I appreciate the question. So obviously I'm not claiming we've met with everybody, but we did go down the street on both sides and behind to meet with people. Now, on this thing about contacting the Residents Association, I've requested multiple times, and it's fully documented, I'm happy to send you all the emails, to get the contact information and emails for the different Residents Associations. But the council, because of data security, wasn't able to share that with me. So instead, I've consistently offered my mobile number and my email address. I've made myself completely available all last week, and I made that clear through the council, and this week. And I wish fully available. I would literally had no meetings last week, entirely intending to meet with the Residents' Council. But I still don't have any contact information at all for any of the residents groups. Otherwise, I would have contacted you all directly myself. So it's not. I don't think it's not intended. I'm not implying any ill will, but I have made myself fully available. I completely understand the council's view that they're not allowed to share my information, the information with me without, I guess, your approval. And I've offered instead my email, my mobile number multiple times over several months, and I haven't been contacted by anybody, surprisingly. Now, I assumed maybe that was because, obviously incorrectly, I assumed maybe it's because I've already spoken to a lot of people and maybe a lot of things have already been addressed, but it's not any intent by me, quite the opposite. I would love to have met with you all. I'm very happy to meet with you again at any time and whenever you'd like. I'm in London last week, the whole week, and I can show you the emails saying I'm completely available, I've cleared everything, I have no meetings, I would love to meet with the Resident Association, here's my information. And then following up, requesting your direct contact information to follow up with you, and being told correctly that they couldn't share it with me. So it's not because I'm trying to avoid anything, quite the opposite. In fact, I've gone to great lengths, I'm very happy, and obviously the key thing with this venue, this process here we're going through now is a starting point, right? But we want to operate a venue that you're all very happy with and all the residents support and doesn't create issues over the next year, 5 years, 10 years. So I have every incentive and every desire to spend as much time and make sure everyone's happy as possible. So I don't want you to think that I haven't been requesting information. I have. I don't want you to think that I haven't been giving my contact information. I have. I've done my best, but I think there's limits to what can be done, and I believe the council's contacted you and given you my information. Have you received my email and my mobile number?
Yesterday, Mr. Drummond.
Only
Yesterday
yesterday.
afternoon. And may I make one point? We actually have had set up and requested 2 resident and applicant meetings to take place. The first was in August before the initial hearing, and the second was Tuesday last week, when we were told that you didn't know about the meeting and you weren't able to attend because you were outside London. So we have endeavoured to be in touch with you, and we've done it through the council.
Yeah. So the one in August was cancelled, that's true. The one in Tuesday I just didn't know about. If I'd known about it beforehand, I would 100% have been there. So that's just a scheduling issue, and I apologise for that. But it's not because I'm trying to avoid you, quite the opposite. I'm very happy that actually so many of you have turned up today. I really appreciate your efforts, and I'm sure it's quite inconvenient being here on a Thursday morning, so I'm very grateful for you coming. But you have my information. I've been giving my information to the council for at least 6 months. So I'm quite surprised you only got it yesterday. I apologise for that. I'm sure there's a reason for it. But
Right, my next question is, are you aware of the number of objections to the noise at Eclipse before the lockdown?
I am aware, but it's, in my opinion, as I've mentioned to you, it's completely not relevant whatsoever, because the venue, as currently previously operated, had at least 50 major problems with it, all of which we're addressing. Everybody was on the street. The entire property was double fronted at street level. There was no seating. You had huge numbers of people coming in and out. The front doors, including the main front door, not only were not insulated, they had air gaps of over a centimetre around the doors. The rear skylight, 9 square meters, had zero sound attenuation. Not some sound attenuation, zero. It was like having the entire roof of the entire facility open to the sky. It was fundamentally flawed design. They underinvested in it. They basically invested in it in 20 years before, didn't spend money on it at all over 20 years. The both connecting walls on both sides were cracked. Most of the windows at the back of the building were cracked. Most of the windows at the back of the building didn't close. Okay, they had no acoustic level, they had no security plan, they had no dispersion plan, they had no street management plan, they had no rear facilities, they had no seating, they had no food. So, on my perspective, it's not relevant at all. And I completely understand why they had problems, frankly. I'm not surprised.
I'm sorry, Mr. Drummond. The point is that the last occasion when residents had to refer to the police were called out.
Mrs. Mills,
Oh.
you will get to make your submission later. This is a time to actually ask specific questions of the
Fine. Okay.
applicant.
In that case, my next question is, who actually paid for the independent report?
So we paid for it, but if you read the report, and you can, Ian can confirm Adrian's credentials, you can read the report. He specifically writes correctly, the report is not being prepared for us, it's being prepared for the subcommittee. And he signs it on that basis. So, if you read the report, you'll see it's fully independent. It wasn't written, we funded it because we were interested, but it wasn't written for us. And frankly, I didn't know what he was going to come back with, but it ended up being relatively supportive. But if you review his CV, it's pretty impressive. And he's been directly involved in setting standards of both management and operations for bars, and obviously as a former police officer, very knowledgeable in this area, and Ian obviously can speak to his expertise. So I think his credentials are impeccable, and I would suggest you can take his recommendations on that basis.
Thank you.
Would any other of the objectors like to ask a question? You are?
Mr. Drummond, I have a question relating to applicant. You referred to yourself as, I think, lead applicant. I'm not sure exactly. The original application was in the name of Prohibition Partners Limited. That company is, as far as I'm aware, a dormant company with capital of £1,000. My question is twofold. First of all, is Prohibition Partners the applicant? And second of all, where is the wherewithal to fund what may be quite a significant expenditure in terms of setup and operating costs? Thank you.
Absolutely, yes. So the Prohibition is the applicant. To date, we've spent £218,000 on the property so far. The budget is an additional 1.1 million, which is being supplied by three investors, one of whom's a F&B fund, so it's fully funded. And it's being done and that's for a very small venue, that's a significant budget. And the reason the budget is so significant is because we're doing very extensive soundproofing and structural works. Both roofs are being completely replaced. They're both rotten and actually extremely dangerous. The facade of the building is dangerous and potentially needs to be fixed immediately. So we've done a detailed structural engineering report. We're putting new steel structures into the building, which have been approved by both neighbouring tenants through the party wall agreement. We're putting in new utilities because the utilities were damaged and the fire wiring was damaged, had water damage. So we're effectively replacing everything in the building. We're fixing all these structural walls. We're putting in new structural beams. We're doing soundproofing between the floors and on all external walls. We're replacing the main roof and the rear roof, completely replacing them. And as part of that, doing the insulation. So it's a significant budget because it's not a very large venue. It's 140 square meters. So the price per meter is extremely high, but that's what we think the location needs it, and we think the local residents require that, and they want a venue of that quality. But it is funded, and I can provide more information on that for you. But so far we've spent just over £218,000 to date spent on it.
Thank you.
Would any other of the objectors, hello, could you say who you are?
Yes, hello, Sarah Heaton. I've got two questions. I think you said that Draycott Avenue was pedestrianised or going to be pedestrianised. I've certainly never heard that. And my other question is about the kitchen. How can a small pop-up on the third floor serve substantial food to 120 people?
So the kitchen's been designed by 3 chefs. So it's actually the reason the seating on the top floor isn't that significant is actually the kitchen takes up half the top floor. It's sufficient to supply the whole building. So the idea is it's full meals on the top floor, and then smaller meals and bar food on the lower floors. But people can order regular food as well, so it can be done. The kitchen's actually quite productive. As I mentioned, the building itself is not very large, so it's manageable. And it's been designed by competent chefs. I'm not an expert on kitchen design, but it's been designed by people who've designed, 15, 20 kitchens before. So I believe the capacity is sufficient. It's a fair question, but they think it can be done that way. And the idea is to make it as efficient as possible. And the reason we're doing things like a set menu is to reduce the amount of food that needs to be stored. So we have a fixed menu for the bar, and we have it's a set menu for the restaurant as well. So the menu is relatively limited. And that's to make it more efficient for both the chefs and for storage. One of the big issues in the building, because it's quite small, is actually storage. So we've done various partnerships. We've done various partnerships with Jeroboam's down the street and various other places for additional storage, because the building itself is quite small. So it's been planned very carefully, and we believe that we can meet the objectives based on that design.
And Draycott Avenue, I'd like to come back about the food. I mean, I personally would consider substantial food to be a knife and a fork. I mean, I don't know what, do you call substantial food chips, or, what in your view will be the offering of substantial food from this very small kitchen?
It's actually a reasonable sized kitchen, surprisingly, but if you look at the plan, we're doing a full meal menu on the second floor and the first floor, and then kind of bar food on the ground floor, which could be, burger and chips, that kind of thing. So whereas the top floor is proper fine dining, and the first floor is also can serve food, so there's tables where you can serve food too. And then Draycott Avenue, the council can speak to this, but it's been announced that they're planning to pedestrianise Draycott Avenue. The plans have been published. It's been supported by residents. My understanding is that 85–90% of residents supported the pedestrianisation plan. It's between Walton Street up to the corner of Don Place. It's on the RBKC website, and we got announcements about it a little while ago. I don't know when it's planned, but my understanding is that's planned.
Would else like to ask? Sir, your name is? Anthony, is that?
My name is Anthony Townsend. I live in Don Place. I was concerned to hear Mr. Drummond say that he's going to great lengths to remove any noise from Walton Street by moving it to the back. Well, of course, the back is Don Place, the north side of Don Place. My neighbours and I are very concerned about these balconies. I can't see any way he can prevent the sound travelling the whole way down the back of Don Place, where, surprise, surprise, we sleep. You're going to try and limit the numbers, I think, Mr. Drummond. Precisely how are you going to do that? You're going to have somebody on the door saying 1 in, 1 out on the balcony?
It's a good question, but yes, under the conditions, we have to do that. So we have to manage the number of people that are on the balconies, and we have to manage the fact they're not allowed to drink out there either. So we have to have staff keeping an eye on it. But because it's waiter service, we have people going up and through the building all the time. So people will be around. It's not that we have staff only on the ground floor and everyone's wandering around the other floors on their own. We'll have people on the first floor and the second floor. So it's a managed process. Your concern about noise is obviously completely understood. I mean, the reason we did the sound report at the back, and obviously as you're aware, that you've got the open train tracks on the side next to the building. So if you're looking from our building, the train literally, it's open train tracks, not sealed tunnel. The train literally runs down the side of the building. So when it runs, actually the building shakes a bit, which is not ideal, but that's just the way it is. So the noise of people speaking on the balcony is significantly less than the existing ambient noise. I'm very happy to share the report with you, the sound report with you. We just share it with the noise team and the police team as well. But we're not trying to increase the inconvenience to neighbours. We believe with the reduced hours, where we're limiting the usage of the exterior areas to shorter hours, and the limited numbers, that the ambient noise effect should be negligible. And that's obviously the intention. And the benefit is into the community is that we're taking people off the street and spreading them around a bit more, or at least during the hours of operation, because we've agreed to shorter hours on those terraces, which we think is reasonable.
I mean, it seems to me that what you take from Walton Street, you're offering to Don Place. It's just moving it, not reducing the noise.
Well, and the difference is there's no train tracks on Walton Street, so you haven't got the trains running past every 1.5 minutes, right? So if you stand at the back of the building, I mean, we've got the sound recordings. They do recordings for 2 weeks. It's basically constant noise at the back. So you have, but from the back of the building, there are 42 air conditioning units that are visible from the back of our building. There you can hear them all. So there's an ambient hum from all the air conditioning units, mostly on the commercial buildings on the right, but some of them are on Draycott Avenue, some a bit further back. You've got the train track running down the side. And obviously we're trying to control the usage of the space anyway in terms of numbers and no alcohol and so on to manage it as well. I understand the concern, but we believe that with the restrictions that have been proposed by the police and noise, that we think it's manageable and better overall for the neighbourhood than having people on the street.
You mentioned air conditioning. You're going to pack a lot of people into a small building, and you've told us it's going to be sealed, so self-evidently you're going to need some powerful air conditioning. Where's that going to be located?
So it's been approved. The plan is actually put up on the roof. We're using these micro air conditioning units, so actually quite quiet. They're, again, quieter than. So obviously, air conditioning is not silent, of course. The question is not is it silent versus not being silent. The question is, does it increase the ambient noise in the area? So we've done, as I mentioned to you before, we've done the sound reports. We've had basically microphones all over the roof and at the back roof recording all the ambient noise. The air conditioning units we're planning are these low velocity units. Because the building isn't very big, it's not very deep actually, you can have units that are small diameter and they have lower airflow and they're actually quite quiet, and certainly quieter than existing units that are nearby. Like for example, our neighbouring buildings both have air conditioning units. Our units will be quieter than those, they wouldn't add to the noise. Also, because the rear area has a large roof, you can do direct air conditioning. So rather than having to have a large unit, you can have direct fan units that are quite quiet, that pump air directly into like fresh air, directly into the building through the roof. Because on the ground floor, it's one open floor and half of it's roof space. So you can put units directly on the back. And again, that helps. So we're trying to, I'm sure you're getting the kind of general picture. It's a very small space overall. We're being very careful with how everything's being planned, how everything's being laid out to maximize space. And obviously we want something that's both reasonable and, well, effective first, so people have fresh air, and reasonable in terms of the space it's occupying and noise it's generating. But we believe we've come up with a very good solution. Similarly on the sound system, we're using these tiny speakers rather than these big loudspeakers. We're using very small speakers in strategic areas, so it gives you more control. And by having more speakers through the building, you don't have certain areas in the building which have booming or much louder than other areas. So we're working with an acoustic engineer to lay out the whole building to make sure it's controlled and done to an even level without any kind of loud spots. The previous design, they had all the speakers at the back underneath this big skylight that had no acoustic shielding whatsoever. So it must have been extremely, if you're on Don Place, it must have been quite noisy, I would guess. But we should avoid most of those problems.
Yes, it was. That's why I'm concerned. One final question, if I may. You place much weight on your independent report from the policeman, but he conducted his survey only one night, as far as I can see, on the 5th of August. Do you think that's a representative time of you to judge the traffic? I would have thought a lot of people are away in August.
So I actually discussed this with him. He actually knows the area very well, and he actually went down there 3 nights, but on that one particular night, he kept a detailed diary. So it's not based only on that one night, but he believed it was indicative, yeah. And I take his guidance on it. He's more experienced on these things than me. I think the key thing here was to try and get an independent view of what really happened on that street. I mean, obviously I've done that myself. I've been down there multiple nights. I'm watching what's going on, where people are congregating, what's going on, because I have the same concerns. I mean, we want to have a venue that works, you know, because if it doesn't work for patrons and for residents, it's not going to be successful. So I've been down there a lot. I've probably been down, I don't know, 10, 12 nights, different Saturdays and Fridays, and seeing what's going on. And his findings are consistent with what I observed myself. And I think actually, you know, I mentioned it briefly, the pedestrianisation of Great Draycott Avenue and the movement of some of the parking will actually further reduce traffic on Walton. And using right now there's 2 taxi bays that are barely used. Using those efficiently and using the valley parking around the corner, I think will also help us a lot as well. So I think what we're doing will actually help progress things on the street and overall help to improve the overall experience on Walton Street.
Any other of the objectors wish to ask a question so we can move on? We're going to have to move on, otherwise we're going to be here. You each get 10 minutes to speak, but I would urge you not to take the 10 minutes and not to repeat each other, because it's going to be well over an hour just hearing your testimony. So if we can just go to brief questions now, and then we'll move on to the police. Thank you. Oops.
Thank you, Mr. Drummond. Your report actually that was conducted about the traffic and the parking which you think is going to be available to you in Walton Street is already taken by the Jacks Zeffy's clients. And I would like to ask you why you think, when there already is a considerable amount of double parking on the yellow lines opposite where you will be operating, where you think you honestly believe that your clients will be able to park and exit quietly. Between the hours of 11 and 1, he referred to the fact that there was a considerable amount of double parking on the yellow lines opposite.
Yeah, and this is obviously, again, covered in the independent reports. As I mentioned, a lot of people coming into that street aren't driving anyway. So a lot of people coming on public transport, people coming in taxis and so on. The 2 taxi bays are actually not very well used. I don't know why. I mean, I'm kind of surprised by that, honestly, but they're not particularly well used. And as I mentioned before, we are going to offer valet parking as well. So for guests that are coming in, we're arranging to work with a car park around the corner in Chelsea Cloisters. So we are expecting to add additional parking for it. Although we think most people won't be coming by car, we would expect, based on the patterns of traffic there, and also covered in the report, that 80-90% of people will be coming on foot, which is what currently happens on Walton Street. So you do have some people coming particularly later, but he addresses both traffic on the other venues as well in the report, as I'm sure you saw.
So does any other objector have a question they'd like to ask of the applicant? Ms. Mills?
May I just ask a quick question, which I hope will be positive? Have you, Mr. Drummond, considered water cooling systems within the air conditioning system, because they are very quiet?
I'll be honest with you, it's not my area of expertise, but I think they are using evaporative cooling, yeah, if that's what you're referring to.
Yep.
And they're using heat cycling units as well, so that we can reuse some of the hot water for the hot water in the bathrooms. So we're trying to be quite efficient. And these units are actually quite small now. The modern units are much smaller than I expected, actually, about a third the size of the unit. So I feel like my microphone's cutting out. Hopefully you can hear me. The modern units are about a third the size of the units that we took out. There were existing units in there, but they were full of poisonous refrigerant, so we had to take them all out. They're not compliant with the code. The new units are roughly 1/3 the volume of the previous ones. But I believe they are using evaporative cooling, yes.
Thank you. So we now turn to the first responsible authorities case, PC Davies. Please could you present your submission? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to appraise my representation, and I'd like to thank the committee, the objectors and Noise and Nuisance in relation to their pertinent questions of the applicant. We have had engagement with the premises in relation to several Teams meetings and also visiting the actual site itself. However, I'd like to highlight, in reference to Appendix D, page 49 of the bundle, in my representation, just outlining the current licensing policy around closing hours, 8.10, and the last sentence being, the licensing authority considers that generally a terminal hour of 12 midnight will, in this particular area, be a better method of promoting the two licensing objectives of the prevention, and I refrain, the prevention of crime and disorder, and also the prevention of public nuisance, than extending terminal hours. I'd also like to refer, and it has been mentioned, to the additional bundle that was being submitted by the applicant, page 26 from Mr. Studd. It is a little bit concerning that, and I support the objector who mentioned it, that the report was done on the 5th of the 8th, which is probably one of the quietest months of the season. It would have been more prudent to have a more balanced approach, in their assessments over the seasons, namely these weeks running up to Christmas would have been preferable. To have a better assessment, even with a later submission, even to adjourn to get a better flavour of the locality. I'd also like to refer to the bundle again on pages 1, 2, 3, Appendix L. You note pages 1, 2, 3 to 1, 2, 7. The general closing hours of the premises are in and around midnight for that vicinity. So hence, the police opinion is with the cumulative impact of Jacks and Zeffis is likely to increase the potential for crime, disorder and public nuisance. The difficulty with this venue and most venues is actually controlling the members of the public, the patrons, outside their remit of the premises when they're going back to their vehicles and they're socialising and loitering in the area. There is concerns as in the police bundle around parking and the issues around that vicinity. I've been on the borough for over 30 years now and been a licensing officer for roughly about 12 years. So I'm quite aware of the locality. There's also the issues of the tables and chair structures along that road of Walton Street, which will also impact on persons loitering, waiting around, parking, etc., etc. And further as well, as far as I'm aware, there was no, and this could be clarified by RBKC, there was no pre-application advice in relation to this applicant. Obviously, we're here now, so based on that position, I would request the consideration that the committee limit all licensable activities to midnight in line with the midnight policy.
PC Davis, I will start with a question. We don't actually have a cumulative impact policy. I myself am in favour of them, but we don't. So we have to look at, legally, we have to look at each application on its own merits. So as you have suggested, Jacks and Zephyr have a later licence. Are these already causing you problems? Is the problem that you know, you don't want more people leaving at that time? Is there already a problem with those? But do bear in mind we do have to look at this on its own merits and not in a way of cumulative impact. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, I'm aware that we have a cumulative impact area in that locality. I think the police opinion and position in relation to this is the additional dispersal of patrons in that area. We have on record there's no concern in relation to specifically Jacks and Zeffis. However, on our statistics, which is slightly differing to what's been submitted, there are issues, but I would not be able to identify Walton Street, Draycott Avenue, Don Place as being those locations. For Hands Ward as a whole, but then you will take in also Harrods. So to answer that question, we've got no primary concerns in relation that's been reported to us in relation to Jackson Zeffis.
Councillor Simmons, you could well.
Thank you. Again, if I can just check I've understood correctly, your main concern, I think, is the additional impacts of this venue given the surrounding other venues, despite the fact those venues themselves are not causing problems.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to check.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Legal advisor, and perhaps you could clarify the issue of cumulative impact and to what extent we can put weight on it, or to what extent legally we have to look at this on its own merits. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I don't have any questions for PC and Davis. What you said was correct. The Council does not have a cumulative impact policy, unlike other boroughs like Westminster. However, each case is assessed on its own merits, and obviously what you have to take on board is, will the proposals promote the licensing objectives? And is there any evidence otherwise? So that's really the basis of your decision in that regard.
Thank you. So I now turn to the applicant. Do you have any questions of the police?
No, I think we've had a very good conversation, open conversation with the police and with Ian. We've addressed a lot of these things. I think I really have more of a statement than a question, so I'll leave it for now.
Thank you. Mr. Mahaffey, any questions from Noise and Nuisance?
Madam, I have no questions. No questions, Madam.
Any questions from the objectors to the police? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
So we now turn to Mr. Mahaffey. You have 10 minutes. Please present your submission. Thank you, Mr. Mahaffey.
Madam Chairman, I hope you can hear me this morning. I'm sorry, I've had a bad cold and my voice is a little bit fragile at the moment, so apologies for that. What I would say here is the fact that the premises can be acoustically treated to such an extent that the noise from the operation of the business can be contained within the premises. This also applies to things like air conditioning and extract systems. And in my understanding, there's been a planning application for the air conditioning and the extraction system at the premises. This has been granted with our standard conditions. And our standard conditions with regards to planning is basically imperceptibility, where the level of the plant has to be 10 decibels below the lowest background level, so it will not impact or affect residents. Basically, it's a breach of the planning condition if you can hear it. And that's, so I don't honestly feel that the building services plant will be a problem with regard to the premises. The issue on this application is purely how does the premises impact on neighbouring residents. We have to look at where Walton Street is. At midnight, there are only 3 premises that are operational. The rest of Walton Street is residential. And clearly, we have to get a balance right between residents' rights to enjoy the property and the commercial operation of businesses in that area. And clearly, my view in regards to this application is that the midnight policy should be considered here for the simple reason that basically we don't, first of all, know the operator, and secondly, additional of 70 or 80 people, whatever it is that leaves the premises at, after midnight, is going to add to the overall noise from people departing. What I would say is that Walton Street is a very reverberant area. People have got bedrooms which overlook the street. We have got residents who are trying to sleep between the hours of 11 p.m. and 11 p.m. and 7 a.m., which is the normal accepted timing for residents to sleep. And they are the people who are going to be affected if there is going to be noise in the street. And it's not just the upper end of Walton Street that we have to look at. We have to look at how does this noise, because these patrons, they are not. You can control your patrons or customers on the premises, but when they leave the premises, you have no control over how they disturb, where they go, and what sort of activities they get up to. And as a result of that, you know, there's a lot of quiet streets off Walton Street where these people can go in, and they can affect those residents there too. But it's very difficult for people to come back to us and say to us, if those residents or those people in the street making the noise were coming from Jack's, they were coming from Zeffy's, or they would be coming from number 113 Walton Street. They are people who are in the street at 1 a.m. in the morning when people are trying to sleep. And that is the issue that I have with this application, is the fact that these additional people are leaving the premises. They have to go out of the premises, they have to go out of the area, and as they go out of the area, what is the impact that they are going to create on the residents? And my view really is, well, the midnight policy says midnight, well then the application should be midnight, and the applicant can then come back at a later date when they've operated for a period of time and put an application in to extend their hours and use temporary event notice to demonstrate their case. But up until now, I have no belief that there will not be disturbance to residents, and that the prevention of public nuisance key objective will not be promoted. On another issue that I've been listening to about noise from the rear terraces, that area is extremely reverberant. The noise climate for that area is going to be lulls and troughs of noise, or lulls and peaks of noise, when trains go past. When the trains don't go past, the background levels are very low. I remember I went to a complainant many, many years ago who was right next door. And basically, they were complaining about the retractable roof above Daphne's. And I sat in their property, and I could hear the people cutting the steak on their plates in that resident's property. That is an indication of how reverberant that area is and how sound will be affected. By having people out in those terraces at the back of the premises, we are going to create sound that is going to be transmitted to the residents in Dawn Place, and as a result of that, there is going to be a significant potential for public nuisance. In that respect, I don't have an issue with people being on the terrace at second floor up until 9:30, but there should be nobody, the use of the first floor terrace should not be there. And at the end of the day, the noisiest part of the environment is Walton Street. So after that, there is no reason why people can't go out into Walton Street and smoke and be managed outside in Walton Street. You know, you don't have to have smoking conveniently located for smokers on the premises. You know, there's no reason why people can't walk down from the second floor and go out into the front of the premises to smoke. My concern with regard to this premises is purely the external management, the impact it has on residents. I will use the word cumulative, but I'm not using it in the sense of a cumulative impact policy. I agree there is no thing, but it will add to the overall nuisance that residents experience. And if you hear from the residents this morning, you will hear from them when they tell you that they do hear noise from people in the street in Walton Street, but because there's 2 or 3 premises and a lot of noise, it's sometimes very difficult to confirm where that noise is coming from. And it is for that reason, Madam, that in addition to the conditions that I've put down in my representation, I consider the terminal hour for the premises should be midnight, as per my the midnight policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mahaffey. Do the committee have any questions?
Yes, thanks. So I have a couple. You mentioned some of the possible complaints of Zephyrs and Jacks. Do you have an example of how many come in, maybe weekly or monthly or over the year? And also, are you saying that perhaps the smoking area would be better at on Walton Street at the frontage after a certain time, so reducing those hours down would be more acceptable, and then having those 10 people or whatever on the front?
Can I answer your first question, please, so I can move on to the second? My brain's not able to absorb all the information. What I would say here is, where you have 2 premises operating late, you have to have good external management at all times. If that external management is not good, then you get the public nuisance. And if that public nuisance occurs, then clearly we have to act. And that's really what we've been doing. We've been doing monitoring in Walton Street. It is one of our areas that we keep a very, very close eye on because of the reverberant nature of the streets and because of these 2 late premises in a predominantly residential area that occurs at midnight in the area. And it really means that if there are problems, we have complaints, and there's history of complaints going over the years with these premises, and it's only by good monitoring and management and liaison with the premises that we're at a stage now where the premises are not causing the problems that they've caused in the past. And that's a concern, that if another factor comes into play at that time in the morning, then the whole thing, the equilibrium, can be changed significantly.
Just to follow up on that, actually, in their submission, they say they're going to have door teams, so people monitoring, so basically effectively doing as the others do, having door staff sort of monitoring people. Would that appease any issues or not?
What dealing with people outside premises, it's a reactive situation, because you don't know how people are going to react when they leave the premises. If you've been drinking, you're a little bit more exuberant, and you can come out. I've been outside premises when people have gone into rugby chants all out of spontaneously, and those rugby chants have disturbed residents. The issue really comes down to is to manage that, and how do you do that? And that's only by having good door staff and having a good policy and getting the processes and procedures correct. And I have no problem with that, but the premises has to demonstrate to us that they can manage it, and that the cumulative impact of their premises will not add to the overall nuisance that residents currently experience from the other premises in the street.
Sorry, just to go back to the first question, just slightly, and then I'll ask you one more and we're done. You didn't really give me a number on sort of how many complaints come through for the 2 that are open now. So maybe monthly or just a ballpark.
Well, we get complaints. You have to look at the complaints and the history of the cases here, because if a premises manages their patrons well for a period of time, then sometimes they don't. We do get complaints, and we do monitor.
So, sorry, I just want a bit of clarity. In the last, say, within the last 3 or 6 months, how many complaints?
I can't give you that information.
Okay, all right, thanks.
I don't want to speculate on that.
Okay, don't worry. My next question, and this will be it. I said it, but you didn't answer. The smoking area at the back, would it be advisable if they actually use the the street level for smoking after a certain time, so reduce the time to sort of a more convenient hour, and then to the street level, rather than having the smoking area on the terraces to a later time?
Well, what I would say is, sorry, I'm struggling with my voice. My experience of the reverberant nature at the rear of the premises is that as the background levels decrease and the number of train movements decrease in the evening, the greater the potential for noise to be transmitted to residents means that there is greater potential for people to be disturbed after 9:30 in the evening. And I consider that if you are willing to permit smoking on the terrace, it should finish at 9 o'clock in the evening, and people then should go out onto the street and smoke there. Smoking is it's something which premises try to discourage. Smokers should be, my personal view is, should be discouraged from smoking on the premises, and making it should be ostracized in some respects. That's a personal view.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Simmons.
Thank you. First of all, I just wonder, do you have a view on the desirability of staggered leaving times in terms of the noise that may create in the street?
The difference between the police and the noise and nuisance team is, if you were to ask residents, do they want to be continuously disturbed by people departing on staggered hours, they would turn around to you and say, no, I would want everybody to leave at the same time. And that would be my view in regards to this, because they know at 11 o'clock in the evening the premises will close and everybody will have gone. And I have a different view on staggered hours than what the police have. There is no significant crime disorder in the street, so that there should be no reason that staggered hours should be the only, sorry, I'm trying to get the right word with my brain not working. It should be promoted here.
Thank you. So would you say that staggered hours would increase or decrease the likelihood for public nuisance arising from noise, do you think?
Well, if you are going to, if all the premises closed at the same time, then basically everybody's gone. Whereas one goes on, then clearly that all you're doing is extending the disturbance that residents experience. But in these circumstances, there are two other premises in the borough, in the street. They have already got licenses. They were licenses that were granted previously under the extended hours orders and things like that from the courts. So we have those premises. Whereas these premises this is a new license, and there should not be a precedent set because of the other premises having those hours, and basically the midnight policy should be in place until they can demonstrate they can operate and manage the premises correctly, and that can be dealt with through a further variation application at a later date.
Thank you. And I just have one more very quick one, if that's all right. You mentioned about external management of the premises and how important that is to avoid or prevent a public nuisance arising. And I just wondered, to what extent are you assured by the dispersal and external management plan provided in the additional documents?
You can write a wonderful essay and explain what you're going to do, but if you don't do what you say, then clearly the problem is going to arise. Yes, they've hit all the key points, but they have to then disseminate that information to the people who are managing the exterior, and also for that they have to have monitoring and reviewing processes in place to ensure that what they're doing is correct and addressing the concerns of residents. They will need to have liaison with residents to see how what sort of issues they're experiencing, and the whole system needs to be adapting. It's an ongoing process. And what they've written, it could be considered to be acceptable, but it doesn't actually, we don't know until it's actually enacted.
Thank you very much.
So I now turn to Lindsay, our legal advisor. Do you have any questions of Ms. Mahaffey?
Just one question, please, Chair. In terms of the first floor and the second floor terrace, you oppose use of the first floor terrace, I believe, but you're happy for the second floor terrace to be used to a certain time. Can you just tell me the configuration of the first and second floor and why the second floor is okay and the first floor is not? I just want to get clear in my head the differences, please.
Well, the difference is that the first floor terrace is a rather large area. It's a a large roof. It can hold considerably more people, whereas the second floor terrace can probably only hold a maximum of 5 or 6 people. Yes, maximum. It's a smaller
and is it
area.
set back the second? So presumably there's the first floor terrace, and then is the second floor set back closer to the building than the first floor, presumably?
It would make no difference the number of people that are out there, because the noise would be very, very similar if people are standing outside chatting on their phones and having conversations. But the one down below would hold significantly more people. And the only way that we can deal with the second floor terrace is to limit the hours at which it is used, and the hours at which, up until 9 o'clock, people will tend to settle down and get ready for bed about 9 o'clock in the evening, and that would be the time that I would suggest should be used to.
Can you repeat the time until?
9 p.m.
9 p.m.
Yes.
So, any questions from the applicant to the noise nuisance team?
Yes, I do. I have a few. So it's good to hear that. I mean, based on your comments, Keith, it sounds like you haven't had a significant number of complaints on the street. And as Adrian had mentioned in his independent report, having spoken to the police and searched on the police database, there was no significant alcohol-related crime or other crime on Walton Street to date, so it's not a concern. But you mentioned that the street's mostly residential, but in practice, my understanding is that the street has two ends. So the one end of Walton Street is very residential, the other end is primarily commercial. And based on feedback from planning, the area we're in is considered the town centre for Chelsea. So it's one of the few areas in Chelsea actually where it's almost entirely commercial. And it's one of the only areas in fact, I think it's the only area in Chelsea where you can convert residential into commercial. So for example, the Chanel building, which is on the corner, had 3 apartments above it. They were the only residential apartments left on that section of the street. They've all been converted into commercial. So it's rather than being mostly...
Mr. Drummond, could you come to your question?
Yeah, my
please?
question is, am I correct in understanding that the zone we're in is considered the town centre for Chelsea and is actually primarily commercial?
What I would say to that is basically that's not my impression of the area, and I was very clear in my comments that I said after midnight the predominant use of the area is residential. There are only 3 premises that are operational at midnight. 2 premises operation at midnight, and that is those 2, the Jacks and the Zeffys. At that end of the premises. There are residential properties opposite. There are residential premises next in neighbouring properties. When I came to Kensington many years ago, I dealt with a complaint in a residential flat above number 111 Walton Street. It basically happened that Eclipse had gone to court and got an extended order to permit them to operate to 1 o'clock from in that part of the premises. Got a license for that part of the premises, and they were living there, but they weren't aware that this had happened, and they were affected by noise from Eclipse. We had to deal with that many years ago. If it has gone back to commercial, then that is a change, but there was a residential use of that area. There are lots of other residential properties in Walton Street. You know, it is a very mixed environment, and it's not a city centre or a town centre environment, and I would very much take issue with that. You know, we have residents. Kensington is a densely populated borough. There are a lot of residents who can be affected, and it's very much for the Environmental Health Department and the licensing regime to address these issues of public nuisance and get the balance right between residents' right of enjoyment of their property and ability to sleep and commercial interests.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the police? Mr. Mahaffey?
So I did have one more question, very briefly.
Okay, if it could be brief. Thank you.
So Keith had mentioned that he was concerned about the management of the dispersional and external management plan. But Keith, would you agree that the police conditions around additional CCTV, additional body cams, additional monitoring on the street, and additional security for controlled hours that the police recommended, would those recommendations from the police that we've accepted, would those address your concerns?
They're good recommendations, they're good conditions to have. I have no problems with that. But again, we're in a reactive situation. The only time you go to look at CCTV and to look at footage from video cams is when nuisance has occurred, and you want to investigate complaints. The whole thing comes down to having the appropriate management there, and for the operators of the business to ensure that they get the appropriate door staff trained, and they monitor and review their processes and practices and do what they expect to do to manage the public nuisance that their customers can create when they depart the premises.
Ian can correct me, but my understanding from the police was that, on the contrary, they consider CCTV and body cams to be an active measure because patrons are aware they're being filmed. So it affects people's behaviour. So rather than being a passive measure you look at 3 weeks later.
I'm not disputing that, and I'm not disputing the need for those conditions, but they're only of value when we have to investigate issues where problems arise.
I'm now moving on to the police. If you have any questions of Mr. Mahaffey.
No questions, Chair.
Are there any?
Quick question, please, relating to your suggestion that midnight is the closing time. Does that mean and include the 30 minutes drinking up time?
That is a matter for the committee to make a decision on. There has been a bit of debate as to whether the midnight policy is 11:30 with 30 minutes or whether it's midnight.
I think
plus 30.
my understanding of the midnight policy will be corrected by our legal advisor, is that alcohol stops being sold at midnight, and then there is half an hour's drinking up time. That's my understanding.
Right. That is correct, madam.
Thank you.
Says, sorry? Claire Skilbeck. Included in managing people leaving the premises, I live halfway down Walton Street, and over the past many years have quite regularly had to clear glasses, empty bottles, half-full glasses. I have a collection of glasses that people have left on the doorstep. Could they perhaps be persuaded to make sure that no glasses and drinks leave the premises with the customers?
Conditions.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
You do all have 10 minutes each, but I would urge you to be a bit more succinct and try not to repeat each other if possible. But anyway, you have a maximum of 10 minutes each.
And
so, Ms. Mills, would you like to start? And before, if I don't know your names, could you state your names before you start giving your evidence? Thank you.
Sorry, I think your legal counsel wanted to make a point.
That was just the point. I don't know all of your names, so I'm trying to take notes, and I'm trying to put names against notes. So, yes, I know some of you given your names, but before you each start, can you each say your name again for me, please, just for clarity? Thank you.
Right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you very much for holding this hearing. I chair Walton Street Residents Association and have done for, I can't remember, it's probably about 11 years now. And we've appeared in front of this committee on a number of occasions of various licensing applications and likewise on planning applications. I'm actually the new girl, amongst the objectors living in Walton Street. I've only been here 17 years. Many of the other residents have been here more than 30. So we actually have quite a cumulative experience of living in the area and the problems that we've encountered. Looking at the application, I'm afraid my first reaction was there is a fundamental principle in law that if you're going to equity, which includes a regulatory authority, you must do so with clean hands. And I suggest that this application, certainly when we saw it, and bear in mind we're hearing different things now, I would have regarded as a frivolous application. And my colleagues have also raised financial aspects, and we're also going to be looking at some of the precedents that this committee has agreed to on other licensed applications. The residents' view is that this is spurious. This is a spurious application. The intention is to establish three floors of bars with outside drinking initially was proposed on the terraces which overlook Don Place. Now that has been slightly amended by what we've been told, but given that we were only given some of this information yesterday, you will understand our concern. The lease of the premises was originally granted for 10 years, and it's now down to less than, well, just over 8 and a bit. So there's obviously a question over how the applicant is going to long-term provide information and maintain proper use of the premises. Because once the license is granted for all 3 floors, I understand it's very difficult for the council to rescind it. So you can understand residents' concerns. I'm interested in the Michelin explanation because that actually I thought was a red herring, and I'm glad to see that the police have actually set out the hours of the various premises that actually have Michelin stars. Mostly they close, but certainly before midnight. Mostly it's 2300 hours. On one occasion in Cadogan Arms, it's 2400, but only on a Saturday, and 2200 on a Sunday. So it's a question of how does one actually tackle what this particular premise is going to be used for. I'm glad at the clarification over the tables and the number of seats. Looking at the drawings which were supplied, I calculated that the ground floor has 6 tables and I could only find 16 seats. Looking at the first floor, there are 5 tables and 17 seats. And looking at the second floor, there are 5 chairs by the bar. So I don't quite understand how the emphasis is now on the actual, it being a restaurant and a destination. I also question on the application, the original application, the distinction between a lounge and an art gallery and a bar. I feel that this was semantics, and again it goes back to my question over this being a frivolous application. And I use that term as a regulator, a former regulator. The documents submitted less than 24 hours ago were not to scale drawings. We'd never seen scale drawings, and I think that is something that I think we should have seen. Coming on to the noise and nuisance in the area, I live in one of the modern houses, so I'm between Hasker and Ovington Street. I am woken up every single Friday evening at probably about midnight as people come down the street shouting and screaming. My bedroom is at the back of the house. I have 2 very strong 1-hour fire check doors between the front of the house and mine. I have very strong double glazing. And then guess what? It's repeated again at 1:15. And this is people coming out inflamed from the existing premises. Now, the applicant says that in their dispersal management, they're going to direct people to bus stops and to the tube stations. Guess how you get to those? They're not all going to go to South Ken. many will go along to the Brompton Road, and the quickest way is down Walton Street and up Yeoman's Row, again another residential street, or to go down to Sloane Square past Hasker Street, First Street and Ovington Street. You can understand the flow of traffic going in that direction is actually quite phenomenal. And I endorse the comment that Claire made earlier about the number of bottles and stuff that we get on our doorsteps. It's absolutely amazing. Residents have been loath to complain as much. I'm now going to be doing so, and I'm going to urge all of our members to constantly notify the noise and nuisance team about the fact that we are disturbed. Because if you're looking for numbers, we can supply them. It's just a question. We have a lot of respect for the licensing team. They do a good job in trying to keep the streets quiet. But once they're off the front door of the premises, that's it. Going back to the question of smokers, I notice that the applicant is saying they want 10 smokers standing outside the front. I would suggest that the frontage is much closer to Café Muse, and if you look at the precedent of that, I think there are only 5 allowed outside the front. I think this idea of 10 in such a short frontage would be just excessive, and it will lead to considerably more noise and nuisance. Going back to the protection of children, which is one of your objectives in looking at this, children sleep at the front of most of these houses because the small bedrooms are at the front. So again, the noise and nuisance and the disruption of the children to the children is phenomenal. And we're getting increasingly more young families moving into the areas, and us old fogies are moving out. So it's going to be a question of children are going to be disturbed far more. I certainly would suggest that this application is rejected. I'd like to see it rejected in its entirety. And if they want to come back and ask for a revised application on ground floor only with a restaurant which could be incorporated in that to provide some food, fantastic. But let's actually look at this as it's been submitted originally to us. Thank you.
Who would like to speak next? Mr. Townsend.
Anthony Townsend, well, you asked us not to repeat, so I won't, but I do want to very strongly endorse what Ms Mills has said. As the sole representative of Don Place at the moment, I'm considerably concerned by what I hear about the very helpful comments from our noise team here. The reverberation is considerable, and people who have been drinking are not usually very sensitive to that. So I am extremely concerned about the outside use of the terraces and very much support the idea that they should be closed from 9 o'clock onwards. I think the idea of having a couple of strong guys there trying to police them, you know, it's moonshine. That just doesn't work. So I would very strongly recommend that the committee restricts the use of those terraces to pre-9 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Who else would like to make representation? You are?
Andrea Sharp. I'm representing myself and the Milner Street Area Residents Association. I've listened to what's been said and I've looked at the new information, and this really is a bar. If you look at the ground floor, the information that we've got is it has a capacity of 70 and seating for my reckoning 24. That is a bar with vertical drinking. My concern is that vertical drinking results in intoxicated people, and leaving the premises at 1:30 at night 6 days a week will cause, I don't see how it will not cause, an increase in noise and nuisance and antisocial behaviour. And nothing that I've heard today changes my view on that. I'll keep it short, that's all I have to say.
Okay, I'll take this lady and then if you say who you are. So
Sarah Heaton, I live in First Street, which is very close. I've just got a couple of things to say. going home at night in the summer months, or okay, not November, Walton Street is a nightmare. It's not a safe place to street. There are place to walk. There are people on the pavements trying to leave these things. There's lots of taxis, mini cabs. I mean, go and have a look. It is not a nice place. I think Mr. Mahaffey has said it is a nuisance. I mean, I don't hear them where I live in First Street, but the parking is bad. The other thing which hasn't been mentioned, there has been a certain amount of, I think it's called chugging or mugging, where drunk people come onto the pavement, the baddies, for want of a better word, come and it's hail fellow well met, and there's a lot of pickpocketing going on, and we know that from our local residents. So it does encourage crime, and I mean, if I walk down the street, I will always go to the other side of the street because it's quite scary on the, I suppose, the south side. Thank you.
And you would like to speak?
Thank you. I would just like to endorse all the objections that have been made so far, and I would like to just return to the traffic and the pickup, and actually the deposit of the clients that happen in Walton Street. I don't think you probably realise that it has a sort of circular a sort of tour of this thing, because the clients first of all come to be dropped off, and then they come to be picked up, and then in addition, loads of them want to stay parking, and that's for Jacks and Zeffis. And when they come along at the hours of between 1 and 1:30, the Uber drivers all hoot their horns to alert the clients that they're there. So we are impacted by this. There is a tremendous amount of hooting, and I'm sorry, but if you honestly think that we would not find this exaggerated by the extra numbers, I think would be remarkable. Thank you.
Can I have your name, please?
Sorry, it's Philippa Briley.
Anyone else like to speak before we ask you questions? No? Okay, could I start with a question to everyone, actually? I mean, Jenny Mills has said that she's woken up every Friday. How often are you actually woken up and disturbed by this kind of thing? Is it once a week, every weekend, you know, see how it goes?
With me, it's every weekend, and it's not just Friday night, it's
Friday
Saturday.
and Sunday.
And Saturday. And Sunday is quieter.
Okay, all right. And any of the rest of you, are you woken up by disturbance?
May I just say that the week before last, at about 1:15 in the morning, there was the most incredible scream I've ever heard. Actually woke me up, and actually woke up my husband, who's actually quite deaf. And we have an extraordinary amount of different types of noises, just people chatting, you know, footsteps, all the general things you'd have in an urban area. But it is predominantly that people do not realize how loud they speak. And also, they come to catch the taxis or the Ubers or whatever up and down the street. So we're all impacted.
Councillor Burns. Oh, sorry.
Well, no, yeah. Thanks, Chair. A couple of questions. One is, if it is more like a restaurant and it is actually seated and they can show us that that is the case, does that make you feel a little bit easier, like at ease, or is that not good at all? Or
It would depend, I would suggest, on the licensing hours. Because it doesn't address, that won't necessarily address the fact that people leave and make the noise. And it's when they leave the premises. I should mention that we have actually had a number of fights, and I really mean street fights, when the police were called. And this was actually outside. On one occasion, it was Zeffie, and that's when the license was reviewed by the police. And the second occasion was just before Eclipse closed, and the police were called, and there were 2 police cars outside. We reported it, and I don't understand why that hasn't come up in the evidence. But it was just, and they had door management, They had outside CCTV, they had all sorts of precautions, and it does cause very much concern. And I totally endorse what my colleagues have said about you don't want to walk down the street at night.
Okay, thank you. And my other question really is to do with the traffic. Does it affect you when you're, I don't know if you guys are driving at all, or if you just walk around there, but if you're driving, does it impact you? Is there a lot of congestion, or is it just at the time that they're coming out and you just see it, or is it affecting you personally?
My personal opinion, and I'd be interested in yours, Philippa, because you're closer to it, is that it's particularly strong at the end of the. But we do actually have an awful lot of noise. Our rubbish trucks come round, can I tell you this, at 7:30 in the morning, because they can't get round the corner of Walton Street, because where Eclipse is, it's right on the bend, and it's quite dangerous. And it's likewise dangerous for people to be standing outside, because what pedestrians end up doing is they have to walk round in the road in order to pass. And the idea of queuing, having a queuing system outside this particular, quotes, restaurant and discrete area, is just going to enhance the situation even further.
Okay.
Philippa.
Thanks.
Thank you. Well, we've had a major plus recently in the daytime, and because in the tightest part of the street, which is actually outside my house, we've had double yellow lines put there, which has allowed the flow of the street to operate so much better. There's somewhere for people, if they get caught, they could go in, and then the cars on the other side can move around. Now, that has transformed the flow of the street. Mm-hmm. I think what we're mostly impacted by at night is, actually my husband would agree with me, the other night we came back from the cinema and it was only 7 o'clock, and there was a car, high-end car, going down Walton Street. Honestly, he must have been doing 70 miles an hour. We get repeatedly these people doing this, and it's very difficult to track them because they're sort of gone. How he didn't kill a woman crossing the road, I really do not know. But in the latter part of the evening, it is this arrival and departure with cars being dropped, people being dropped off, and in the evenings, early hours of the morning, the hooting of the Uber drivers. And I think it's extraordinary to say that the people will sort of disperse off to the tubes and the whatever. They don't. They come by car. Their point of, the first point is to try and park as close to Jackson Zephyrs as they possibly can do. And I would also like to say that the reason why we have a very good relationship now with Jackson Zephyrs and all of this is because we have battled for this. And there are rises and, drops off, doesn't always go so well. But for the most part, we have very, very good communication. But it's the numbers already that we have. And the fact that they have to park on the double yellow lines in the early hours. The police, this has been alerted to, and they have come around and tried to remove them. It will only add to that. Or I can't see how it won't.
But just to follow up on that, sorry. So having good communication is key for you guys, right? So building a good rapport with your neighbours would be something that would help, at least.
It's been very hard fought. I cannot tell you. I mean, the initial problems we had with Jackson Zephyrs were absolutely extraordinary. Really, incredibly difficult to live in the area with what was going on. It has been very hard fought, but we're in conjunction with keeping a very, very clear idea of what the parameters are. And what can I say apart from that, It's tried and tested. But we're now, looking at another 130 people who are going to be exiting when we already have, if you add the numbers up. I mean, it is predominantly a residential area, whatever anybody likes to say. We are the residents. And actually, we've never had a problem with the Enterprise and Scalini's and other places that have been in Walton Street all the years we lived there, nearly 38 years. And our children have gone up there. They've gone to Eclipse. The hours have been good. People have gone home. They haven't had extended hours to 1 and 1:30 in the morning. So it's been good. This has changed all that.
Okay, thanks.
Pick up on one point, which is the valet parking. That's only going to exacerbate the parking problem and the collection and drop-off problem, because there are going to be cars waiting in the street, taking up space and blocking the road.
Thanks.
Councillor Simmons.
I don't have any questions.
Lindsay Lemazure.
No questions from me, thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the responsible authorities? Mr Davis first.
No questions, Chair.
Mr Mahaffey?
Nothing, Madam. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, any questions from the applicant of the objectors?
No, that was very helpful. Thank you.
So at this stage I would now like to ask our legal officer to deal with the draft conditions and any other queries she may have.
Thank you, Chair. Has everybody received the draft conditions that were circulated by governance yesterday? They are my conditions, which incorporate the police noise and nuisance and the applicant's conditions and some of the objectors' observations. Right, so obviously this is only if the committee is minded to grant, so obviously we just have to go through this. If anybody wants to chip in, if you could perhaps put your hand up or put your microphone on if there's any salient points to be had. I think first of all, before we go on to the conditions, I just wanted to, I mean obviously if it is granted, both noise and nuisance and the police have asked for a midnight hour, and presumably it will be pro rata for the escalation of hours from second floor to first floor to ground floor. I'm assuming that to be the case. I just wanted to ask the applicant, you've said that you don't really need off sales. Are you still asking for this as part of the application, or do you want it removed from the application? Obviously it's up to you.
I mean, if it's happy, we're happy keep it included as standard terms, but we're not planning to use it currently.
So you want to keep in off sales, but...
If it's a standard part of the license, yeah, we'd normally keep it, I think.
All right, I'm just making
And on the point of staggering, no, I think the idea of the staggering was to address the concerns around the dispersion plan. So if it was going to be collapsed in terms of hours, we'd have everything closing at the same time. We wouldn't.
Sorry, can you repeat? Sorry, you have to speak slowly and clearly because I'm
Yes, I'm
hearing
sorry. You're saying, would it be staggered if the actual total hours were reduced? No, we wouldn't want to stagger it. So the staggering was intended to spread it out, assuming we have the full range of hours. If the hours were reduced, we wouldn't want to stagger it, no.
So only staggering if it as per you asked for?
Yes.
Okay. And just one other question I just wanted to ask before we start going through all the conditions. You've said that obviously it's going to be predominantly seated customers with some standing. I just wanted to ask what your view was on if there was kind of a condition which basically required second, first and ground floor for all customers to be served alcohol to be seated at a table by waiter or waitress service, except for X amount of people at the bar on the ground floor. Would that be
That's effectively what we propose. So we would propose basically the second and first floors are seated, and the ground floor is there's extensive seating. I'm not sure if you're misreading the plan, but there's actually quite a lot of seating, including bench seating on the ground floor. But we think you need to have, realistically on the ground floor, because people are coming up and down through the building, it's not practical to have everybody seated because people are going to be moving up through the staircases, going to the bathrooms. So as we proposed it in the conditions, we're proposing that the first and second will be primarily seated. The ground floor is seated but has access to people come through, so it's not a fixed requirement.
Sorry, so in relation to the ground floor, there will be customers seated. I think what I'm trying to... So is there only a bar on the ground floor, first of all?
Okay, so to be very clear, there's only a bar on the ground floor. There isn't a bar on the top floor, if it's not clear from the plans.
So none on the first, none on the second, just the bar on the ground floor?
No, it's waitress service only on the first and second floors.
Okay.
There's only a bar, like a bar on the ground floor.
Okay, and that's where all the drinks will be served for all the floors?
Yes.
Okay, so, sorry, just to be clear, so I'm clear in my head, would you be happy with an exception for X amount of people standing at the bar? Would you be happy for for alcohol only to be served on the ground floor by waiter waitress service to people seated at tables, with the exception of agreeing a number of people at the bar. Is that?
I guess it could be done. The difficulty is, I mean, so if you're doing it by a whole floor, so for example, if you have a waitress on the first floor, she can make sure people are seated. The challenge on the ground floor is if people are coming in and out, it's very hard to manage unless you've grabbed people and forced them to sit down. So I think it'd be difficult to manage it. So when we were going through this process with kind of the consultants, advisors and police and everything else, they seemed happy with what we proposed, which was seating on the first and second floors, and the first floor a bit more flexible because it's difficult to manage where people are sitting specifically because so many people are walking up the stairs, going to the bathrooms, maybe going to smoke on the terrace.
So what are you suggesting for the ground floor then? What are the restrictions?
So we're basically, in our plans, we're proposing seating. So the seating should cover at least, so the 80% number was based on the entire building. So
80% on the whole building?
On the whole building, yeah. So we're still trying to keep 80% of the whole building, which means obviously a lower percentage on the ground floor. But the vast majority of people on the ground floor will have seating available.
So obviously first and second floors seated at tables served by waiter waitress service. So in relation to the ground floor, you're asking not for that restriction on the ground floor subject to
ideally yes, because it's difficult to manage it. But I mean, we can look at that if you want to propose something. But I think from a practical point of view, it's difficult to manage it. Whereas on the first and second floors, it's quite easy to manage.
Okay, fine. All right, moving on to the conditions. So the bits in red are my amendments or alternative suggested conditions. So condition number 1, I'm going to aim this primarily at the applicant, but obviously if anybody else has got something to say, please chip in. Are you happy with condition number 1 as amended by me? Hopefully you would have had a chance to read this last night. It's just based on our standard wording, so it shouldn't be problematic.
Were you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you. I'm asking for your comments primarily on these conditions and for other people to chip in. Are you happy with number 1? With my?
Yeah, so these conditions have been put together with us in association with everybody, so yeah, we're happy with it.
All right, so I'll go through each one if you say yay or nay, please. So number 1, you're happy with?
Yes.
Number 2, I've said refer to condition 46 below instead. Number 3, are you happy with the wording on that, with the red words?
Yes.
Thank you. Number 4, Challenge 25 policy and notice, that's quite standard.
Yes.
Thank you. Number 5, how many SIA staff are you proposing, and are you happy with those times? If other people have got comments on the times I've put in, and what about Sundays, because there's no reference on Sundays? Can I just have your comments on that,
Yeah,
please?
the hours on Sunday are in the table at the top of the proposed conditions. If you see there's a column for Monday, Saturday, and a column for Sunday.
Yeah.
So it's included in there.
Are you having SIA on Sundays?
I'm sorry, say?
Are you having door supervisors on Sundays?
Yes, there's a condition after a certain time that we have to have a door. Have to check exactly, but it's in line with the police conditions. So whatever we agreed with the police.
It's in one of the police. Okay.
Yeah, the police asked for coverage on the doors for certain times.
So let me just double check.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Sorry, just bear with me while I check. Sorry, Ian, is that one of your conditions, SIA?
Yeah, I'm looking for it now. It's in
on my list because I've transposed all your stuff over.
Yeah.
I think you've.
Yeah, the SI conditions one of ours. Yes.
Is it number 23? Sorry, which number one is it on my list?
Yeah, that's the body worn.
That's the body worn. Yeah.
Yeah, there's one in the end when conditions for the applicant condition. So it's on the second from last page. Number 5.
Sorry, I'm looking at my list. Are you looking at my list?
I'm looking at apologies. Okay, I've got it. Sorry, apologies. So on your list, which number are we on now? Number 5.
Right, sorry. Obviously, you've got my sheet.
Yes.
So far, you've agreed to 1, 3, and 4.
Yep.
With my revised red wording. I just want to double check you're happy with that, because obviously you weren't going from my sheet before.
Yeah. Yeah, 1, 2, 3 are fine. 4 is fine.
So number 5, in the words in black, I
Yep.
took from your suggested conditions. You just said door staff shall be employed from 8 till 1:30 Monday to Wednesday and 7 till 1:30 Thursday to Saturday. So one of my questions is, what about Sunday? Are you having door staff on Sundays?
This is based on the proposal from the police. We basically adopted their suggestion, so they didn't suggest anything on Sunday.
So sorry, can you be clear? Are you having SIA on Sundays?
That's not the intention, no.
No,
We're proposing it
okay.
Monday, Saturday. Yeah.
That's not your intention, okay. So looking at the wording in red, my proposed wording, so how many SIA staff are you proposing? And I'd be interested to see if the police have got any comment on numbers and times as well, and environmental health.
I think the proposal was to have 1 on the main door, so to your point, checking people in and out of the building, making sure that people don't leave with drinks.
So 1.
So so 1 minimum of 1, but in reality on certain nights we'd have more than 1 because we have additional staff upstairs. In addition to the waiters, I mean, so more than 1 security, but a minimum of 1. And there's another condition about not leaving with drinks and so on, and re-entry conditions. That
Yeah,
kind of
I
thing.
understand that. Yeah, I just want to be very clear, because obviously I've got to go away and draft these conditions. So
Yes.
I want to be very clear what everyone's intentions are. So a minimum of 1 SIA door supervisor on duty at the main entrance and then you're saying from Monday to Wednesday from 8 until 15, I've put until 15 minutes after close, and on Friday and Saturday from 7 until 15 minutes after close, and the customers have left. And then 1 additional SIA for every 50 customers in excess of 100. So you're saying there's a maximum capacity of 120. So when you tip over 100, we're saying 2 supervisors, and up until then 1. Can I have your comments on that, please?
Yeah, that's fine.
Right, police, are you happy with that? Noise and nuisance? Keith, are you happy with that? Thank you. Objectors, any comments?
On weight, there we go. Yes, I think it's a question of, if you are going to grant smoking zones on the balconies, the 2 balconies, how is somebody going to be able to monitor that within the applicant's team of
We've
staff?
got a smoking condition later on.
Yeah,
we-
but
we-
no, it's taking drinks in and out. That's the problem. It's not just the smoking, it's taking the drinks in and out
I
onto
think
those.
there's a condition about taking drinks outside as well.
I'm
I
sorry, I've
believe.
only seen these less than
Ah,
24
okay,
hours ago.
fine,
So,
sorry,
you
yeah.
know, it would have been helpful if the applicant had supplied these earlier to us.
To be fair, I mean, these are my ones, so obviously I was building on
No,
their
the
ones, so
original-
it's my fault as well. Beg your pardon?
I think it would be rather perverse not to have somebody on a Sunday of any, I can't see why Sunday is any different to any other day.
And Sunday is proposed on sales until midnight and off sales until midnight, and live music until midnight, recorded music till half midnight, late night refreshment until half midnight. So can I just have the applicant's views on SIA on Sunday as well?
Well, we're just taking guidance from the police. They didn't believe it was necessary. So,
Take guidance from who, sorry?
From the police. So based on the police conditions. So it was a series of conditions they gave us around access points, access control, TVs, CCTV, and the hours for SIA. They didn't recommend anybody on Sunday. We expect the numbers on Sunday would be very small, so we don't expect it to be an
Ian,
issue.
can I just have your view on Sunday SIA, whether needed or not?
with Sundays tends to be not so busy in relation to premises as a whole, and it's deemed as quite onerous financially for a lot of premises. However, we will be guided by the objectives of residents and obviously the committee if you see fit to have an additional SI on a Sunday.
Yeah. Right, okay. So moving on to condition number 6.
Quick question.
Are you happy with my just rejigged wording in red?
Sorry, just a quick question. Sorry to go backwards. On number 4, does the approved age system have to operate all day or after a certain time in the day?
Sorry, condition number 4 you're talking about?
Yeah, number 4. Yeah, I apologise if you can hear me. Would the system be operating, say, after 7 p.m.? Is that the intention?
Sorry, number 5 you're talking about?
Number 4, proof of age system.
So
Gracious, that should be throughout
that's
the
all
day.
the time, all the while you're shall operate.
So if somebody's coming in at lunch for coffee, we don't want to be checking their driver's license. I assume it's more for the evening.
Well, it obviously applies to alcohol. So when you're serving alcohol, and presumably your alcohol's kicks in from 10, that's what you're asking for, and your opening hours also kick in at 10. So yeah, it'll be the whole time the premises are open.
All right. Okay.
Right. Sorry, was there a question from Ms Mills before we move on to number 6? Okay. Okay, well, we've heard from the applicant and the police on that, so the committee will decide on that. Thank you. Right, number 6, are you happy with the rejigged wording in red?
Yes.
Right, this is about smoking now, number 7. So we've established that Mr Mahaffey doesn't want smoking or any access on the first floor terrace, but Keith, can you just clarify how many smokers and the times for the second floor terrace?
The number of the terrace is very small, and also the second floor of the premises will have a maximum of 20 people. So I would suggest anything less than 3 or more would be sufficient.
3.
3.
Till what time? 9 p.m. Did you say?
9 o'clock. 9 p.m.
Can I just draw your attention to dinings, where there was a ground floor terrace, and the licence was reviewed recently, well, not recently, before lockdown, and the closing time for the use of that terrace was 6 p.m. And I think that's certainly what the objectors would want to see.
Keith, can you turn your mic? Thank you. Right, number 7. So the first bit in red, so patrons and staff shall only smoke in the designated area for smoking. So the designated areas will be that second floor terrace and presumably outside the front of the building. Is that correct, Mr. The applicant? Sorry, what's their name? Drummond.
Yes, I mean, we've made proposals for different hours and different numbers in the different areas, so in the front and in the back. I mean, I think ideally we'd like to make this condition more granular. So there's a requirement, a condition on the first floor terrace, second floor terrace, and front, in line with what we propose would be more helpful, I think. I think the negative of trying to only have, say, one person allowed in I'm exaggerating, but to make a point, is people then wander down the street to the corner and all smoke on the corner. I think it needs to be something that we have an interest in managing it, making sure it's managed sensibly. But if it's too restrictive, people are just going to walk down the street and do whatever they want, and we won't be able to manage it. So I think it needs to be somewhat balanced. So I would suggest on this condition, perhaps if you could look at what we propose for the rear terraces and for the front area, maybe make it a little more granular. That would be helpful.
So just to be clear, the second floor terrace, how many and what times are you proposing?
We proposed, I believe, 8 people until 10 p.m.
Until 8 people until 10 p.m.
I think I have to find exactly. Yeah, I'm going to.
I know Keith is opposed to use of the first floor terrace. Were you proposing to have smokers on the first floor terrace?
Yeah, we proposed to include the first floor terrace, but include it with the numbers and have it limit till 7 p.m. So much lower limit in terms of time. So that's more in the afternoon, because in the afternoon it's kind of sunny. People might go out there, but later on they go up to the higher terrace. So the idea is, but the combined numbers would be 10.
Right, so you're, sorry, I just need to be clear. So second floor terrace, 8 people till 10 p.m.
Yeah.
First floor terrace, what are you saying there?
Well, it's the combined numbers, so 10 people across both terraces, and the first terrace only usable till 7 p.m.
Sorry, sorry, are you saying 8 people first and second floor, or
Yes.
you're saying 8 second plus another amount? So I'm not clear what you're saying.
Combined.
Combined. All right, so first and second floor terrace, combined amount of 8 people until 10 p.m.
For smoking, yeah.
For smoking, okay, fine.
Yep.
And what about outside the front of the premises? Do people have comments on numbers? Ms. Briley?
So,
Sorry, I'll come back.
The eclipse really isn't very big, and that 10 people is really quite a lot for people to pass by, which is going to be a problem at that hour. The frontage of Zeffie's and Jack's is much, much broader, and this is a very limited frontage if it should turn out that 10 people are going to be there. Sorry? Well, I would say a maximum of 6.
And the license for that, because I think they're allowed to have 5 people outside, and it's a very similar frontage.
Thank you, I'll make a note of that. Sorry, Mr. Drummond, your view on smokers' numbers outside, please, the front?
yeah, our muse is actually quite a bit narrower than the property, but I mean, I would suggest that if we have a total number of smokers and we have to move them around, so if we say it's 8, or say it's 8 for sake of argument, then we'd have 8 in the back, and when that closes, they can have 8 at the front. So it's always 8 total.
Oh, always 8?
Yeah.
Or 8 all over, okay.
I think that would be the way to manage it, because that way we try and keep people off the street as long as possible.
Okay, fine. All right, and then you're happy with obviously providing smoking receptacles as well outside?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right, number 8, there shall be no new entries to the premises after midnight. Can I have anybody's comments on that, the responsible authorities in particular? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think we'd gone with the police condition, which was 0045, so 12:45 rather than 12:30, but yeah.
Okay, Ian Davis, you okay with that? Yeah. Keith, you okay with that?
No, because I'm asking for a midnight closure.
Can you speak up, Keith? Sorry.
Sorry, I'm asking for a midnight closure, and midnight is way past when we would want people coming and going from the premises.
What time would you suggest for this then?
Well, I don't think we need one. I think if the premises needs to close at midnight,
therefore unnecessary.
and everybody
Okay.
off by midnight.
Okay, and presumably the same for number 9 as well then. No re-entry. So new entry. Okay, I think they're pretty much the same, aren't they? Okay.
Yeah, just rereading this, the 8 and 9 that you have here are based on the police suggested police conditions. So we were happy with 8 and 9 as they are, as you have them. I understand Keith made a comment.
Okay. Okay. Excuse me. Right, moving on to number 10, 11 and 12. These are standard conditions. Are you happy with the wording for 10, 11 and 12, Mr. Drummond?
Yes, we are.
Right, moving on to number 13. Are you happy with that? I think it's one you offered. I haven't changed, so I think you should be happy with number 13.
Yes.
Number 14, this is just me tweaking the wording. I presume you're happy with that?
Yeah, I think my understanding on this one is a standard condition.
Yeah.
So we're happy with the non-amplification condition. We actually do have, so we are trying to support local live music. There is one actually, the only issue here is, well, 2 is fine to begin with, but there is one small quartet that we're trying to work with as well. Is there a particular reason why it's limited to 2, or is that a standard condition within the borough?
Well, I think it's a standard condition. Perhaps Mr. Mahaffey can elaborate on that one.
What I would say here is I don't see a need for that condition on the license, because we are already encapsulating the condition that no music or amplified sound generated on the premises should give rise to nuisance. You can have 2 performers playing very loudly, or you can have 3 performers playing very quietly. Depends on the volume of the music that you're playing on the premises and the acoustical performance of the building. And the building should be appropriately acoustically treated to contain the use of the operation of the business, and that's what we'd wish to achieve through the acoustic report and detailing of the building condition that's further on in the list.
And can you just clarify, in terms of deregulated hours, up until 11 p.m, or, live music and recorded music can be played unrestricted?
It's all deregulated. These conditions will only kick in at 11 p.m.
So Keith, the applicant's saying that he might have a quartet on the odd occasion, whereas the condition's saying it's limited to 2 performers. Is there any alternative wording that you might suggest?
I don't really think there's a need for that condition.
So I think what Keith, correct me if I'm wrong, Keith's suggesting we remove the condition because it's covered by the restriction on not causing noise or nuisance. And we agree with the non-amplification anyway. So I think you can just leave it, if you want to leave it in, just leave it as live music should not be amplified, which is fine.
Keith, you all right with that?
Well, if they're happy to volunteer that, then I find that acceptable.
Right, number 15, I've just tweaked the wording. Are you happy with that?
Yes.
Thank you. I think number 16 is not necessary because it's covered by number 1. Right, number 17, about no externally promoted events to be held at the premises. You've offered that, I presume. Is everybody happy with that? Thank you.
Yes, it's a police condition, and we're happy with that. Yeah.
Right, number 18, I've added the word maximum. So the maximum number of patrons on the premises, excluding staff, at any one time shall not exceed 120. And on each floor, excluding staff at any one time, shall not exceed. Now, you changed these numbers, didn't you? So I said...
Yeah, it should be 70, 30, 20.
70, 30 and 30.
70, 30, 20.
30, 30, 20. Sorry, beg your pardon.
70, 30, 20, yeah.
70, 30, 20. Yeah, I've got
yes.
that.
Yeah, no, I apologise for confusion because it's changed relatively recently. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, so number 19... I've just tweaked it to, so consumption of alcohol on the second floor of the premises shall cease at, I think you've suggested midnight, so this is your word, obviously this is to be decided, the final times.
Yes.
And the second floor shall close to patrons, and so there's like a 30-minute drinking up, and then they have to vacate. Are you happy with the wording for that? Obviously the committee will decide the times ultimately.
Yes, so 19, 20 and 21 are consistent with the proposal we've made in the conditions. We've got staggered closing, so we're happy with them, yeah.
Okay, just check. Okay, number 21, now we're moving on to the conditions proposed by the police. I haven't made too many changes.
Yes.
And I presume you've agreed, so you're happy with 21?
Yes.
Are you happy with 22, the CCTV?
Yes, and 23.
23.
Yes.
24, I've
Yes.
said go to our condition 44 below, which might be, I think might be some extra wording in. We can discuss that then. 25, I've suggested going to our condition 43 below. We can discuss
Yes.
it then.
Yeah, we've already provided the draft plan.
Okay, we'll discuss that.
Yep.
26, are you happy with the wording, including my red bits?
Yes.
27, are you okay with that? That's
Yes.
your 28.
Sorry, Lindsay, can I just interject there,
Yes.
Fiona?
Which condition?
Condition 27. Can
Yeah.
I just confirm that it means external induction and external refresher, just for enforcement purposes?
Okay, I'll just add the words external for both induction and refresher. Is that okay, Mr. Drummond?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank
If you have, do you have consultants you recommend? Or, I mean, we have people we're working with already, but no, it's okay. All right, fine. So we just need to keep a log of which staff members have had which training, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's fine. So that's fine.
Okay, so I think you said you were okay with 28.
Sorry, can I just interject on 28? It's just for enforcement purposes.
Yeah.
So there's a recommendation that a named person shall be responsible.
Yes.
Was the intention for the named person to be a member of staff, or was it to be someone from that private booking?
No, it specifically has to be one of our members of staff. So what the police were concerned about is us handing over the whole building and security to some random group that then do whatever they want. So the idea is that we have to retain accountability for the security in the whole building. So even if we do, say, a private birthday on one floor, we're still accountable for managing the staff, managing the entry and everything else, and complying with the conditions. So that's a staff police requirement, which is we're fine with.
If that's the case, I prefer to see the wording staff rather than person, if that's possible.
Thank you. Right, are you all right with 29 and 30?
Yeah, so 29 addresses one of the concerns raised by the residents, and we're happy with that. And 30 is correct as well.
Thank you. Then we will go down to the conditions proposed by noise and nuisance. Are you happy with my wording in red? So this restricts alcohol sales on the first and second floor to customers seated at tables served by waiter waitresses on the first and second floor.
Is this consistent? Sorry, 32 is duplicated?
I've said look at 33 and 34 below.
Okay. I mean, I think it feels maybe 32 isn't required. Maybe you kill.
Yes, that's correct. I'm just kind of skipping
Yeah,
that.
I'd kill 32, and then 33 is fine. Yeah.
So are you in relation to 33? Are you happy with
33
the red wording?
Yes, I am.
In relation to 34, are you happy with the red wording?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Right, number 35, is that okay?
Yes.
And then number 36, so this kind of says subject to 19 and 20, which
Yes.
are the drinking up times for the first and second floor. So
Yep.
subject to those times, the premises shall close and all patrons to be off after 30 minutes. So that covers, like, globally,
Yes.
the ground floor.
So basically, this is this kind of 30 minutes for dispersion for each floor, which is in line with what we requested. So we're happy with that. Thank you.
Fiona, are you happy with that wording? Does that make sense?
It does.
Thank you. Number 38, so no alcohol or drink shall be taken from the premises in an open container. Is that okay?
Yes.
Could I interject at this point?
Yes.
I'm sorry, is that okay?
Of course.
All right, may I just say, under the conditions of the license, you say that off-street, off-premise sales, i.e. Deliveroo, are there, that they could be activated or they will be disallowed in the license? Because actually, what we get then are motorcycles.
So
and
they
are so intrusive.
That it was not accepted, the condition that the off sales was left in.
The applicant wants us to keep
That's
in off
what's-
sales, which would
That's
cover
been
Deliveroo.
requested, okay. But there's-
Could I ask that that could be removed due to the disturbance from motorcycles late at night, which we already have? They actually park at the top end of First Street. Be most grateful for that to be removed.
I've made a note of that for the committee to consider. Thank you. Number 39.
Just on that one. I mean, we're happy to have a restriction that we won't work with delivery services. That's totally fine.
Saying no delivery services.
Yeah, I mean, the only issue is obviously during COVID, when everything, if the bar's shut for 3 years, then commercially you might want to do that. So it's it's a question of how you want to do it. When generally having looked at licenses locally, every single license we looked at has on and off sales. As I mentioned, we don't have any plans for off sales at all, but it seems unusual to take it off because every other license has it as a standard terms.
Okay, so if you kept off sales, but you're saying you're not going to have Deliveroo, it would basically mean that people could buy alcohol and take it away from the premises.
Yes, I guess so. But I mean, we're not planning to do that either. But we're definitely not going to do Deliveroo. So if that's the concern.
So you're not desperate for it, but you still want it kept in ultimately, is that what you're
Ideally,
saying?
yeah, because it gives an option. It has an option value, but we're not planning to use it.
Okay, we'll let the committee make a decision
I'm sorry,
on that.
could
Thank
I
you.
just come back on that? I mean, half of the problem is what we find on our doorsteps in the morning from people who take stuff and then eat it in the street, and then they don't, they leave it wherever, they sit on our doorsteps to eat it. So I have to say, can I be quite clear that this is a problem and it adds already to the disturbances that we encounter? So whether this should be in a license or not, I think is a debatable point, actually.
I think the other thing to note, and Fiona can chip in here, so obviously late night refreshment only kicks in, the regulations only kick in after 11 p.m, and they've only got late night refreshment indoors, so they can't have Deliveroo type takeaways from 11 p.m. That will be outdoors. Is that correct, Fiona?
That is indeed correct. But we also, yeah, that is correct. Sorry, yeah, it is. Yeah.
So that clarify matters for you. So after 11 p.m, but they couldn't have Deliveroo takeaways, but obviously it's unregulated up until 11 p.m. anyway.
Yes, I think we also find that the motorbikes cyclists hover, and they are going up and down the street anyway. So I can just offer you that. They actually sometimes are predominantly at the top of First Street waiting, for orders.
Thank you. I made a note of that. Number 39, are you happy with the rubbish and refuse conditions in red?
I think we had this changed to 8 o'clock. Actually, I think we changed it slightly because, if I remember correctly, the wording we used was something along the lines of till 8 a.m. or in line with the borough's rubbish collection. Because my understanding is that the rubbish collection on Walton Street, because I've spoken to the council about it, is at 7:45 for our location, so that we'd be in breach of it, because we are planning to work with the council for rubbish disposal. So I think this needs to be till 8 a.m. or consistent with the council's rubbish collection.
Right, so the rubbish can't be put outside between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m.
Right, but this says refuse
And then refuse
collections and
collections
deliveries.
shall not take place between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m. So what times are you asking? 7?
So 8 a.m. basically.
7.
Rather than 7, yeah, 8 a.m. And when we spoke to the council, they said that they do the pickups between 7:30 and 7:45.
Yeah.
And if we want to do deliveries, it has to be before then or after then. Ideally, we'd like to do it after then, but it's a bit tight.
Okay.
Anyway, 8 a.m. would be fine.
Okay.
But if you look at the wording,
so you want the more generous time, basically, for refuse collections?
Just because it's consistent with the actual times of deliveries and refuse collection currently on the street.
Are you relying on the council collections, by the way, or private collections?
Yes, we are going to work with the council, yes. Okay. But otherwise, we'd be in immediate breach of the condition, which is a bit pointless.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, on the refuse, Mr. Drummond, you have to put the rubbish out by 7 a.m. for collection at 7:45, 8, whatever time that is. But just to clarify.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
It just says, the wording here says, refuse collections and deliveries shall not take place before blah, 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 7 a.m., which means we'd be in breach of it because they're after 7 a.m.
I'm not talking about, sorry, deliveries is a separate condition. Number 39 is talking about rubbish and refuse.
I
think there must be a separate deliveries condition somewhere, I'm guessing.
Yeah, refuse collections.
Does it?
In 39. Unless I'm misreading it, it says refuse collections.
We have no colour.
And right now it's around 7:30, 7:45, so we need it at 8 o'clock.
This one's here.
That's all.
That's his.
Okay.
That's hers.
What's his? That's hers.
Okay.
Okay. We got it?
Yeah, we can discuss that in private session. Thank you. Number 40, so these are all the noise and nuisance conditions that we're looking at the moment. So I think Keith's suggested wording was in black, and the applicant's suggested wording and timings in blue. I mean, Keith has said that the second floor terrace shall not be used between 9 p.m. and 8, and the doors to be locked between 9 and 8. Obviously, you're saying between 11 and 8, and you're restricting it to 8 patrons, but you said that 8 patrons were globally over the entire property and outside, so I think that's really a matter for the committee to go away and decide upon.
Yeah, I think based on feedback, we'd shortened it from 11 till 10, actually, already, on the second floor, and from 11 till 7 p.m. on the first floor. That was in our proposed conditions that we posted. So, sorry, to repeat, so second floor would be 10 p.m. and first floor would be 7 p.m.
So, restrict from, all right, 10 p.m. second floor, 7 p.m. first floor, okay.
Yes.
Lovely, thank you. Number 41, Keith doesn't want any public access to the first floor. You're suggesting between up to 7 p.m. Obviously, that will be for the members to decide on that.
Yes.
Number 42, you happy with number 42?
Yes, we're happy with
I think
this.
you've agreed that one before.
Yep.
Number 43. Right, so this is Keith's version of the dispersal and external management plan. Are you happy with Keith's wording in black for this? Because I know earlier you might have done slightly different wording. And condition 25.
Yes, so I mean, obviously, we've already published a draft plan, external management and dispersal plan. I mean, we have to see what they come up with, but yeah, I think this is fine, in principle.
Has that been submitted to the authorities yet?
Yeah, it's in the pack that we've already got.
All right. I don't know if it's been Keith, have you kind of dissected it yet, or is it to be
It's
done?
saying, it's the one thing here, it's saying the premises license holder shall incorporate any recommendations of the licensing authority, police and environmental health into the plan. We believe we've already done that.
Okay, so it wouldn't be an issue agreeing to that anyway?
Yeah.
Sorry, could I ask that we maybe have a change of wording for that? Because basically it's a bit it's a bit onerous on the applicant for us to tell them what to do. What we would do, I would prefer to see, where is it now?
Can you speak up, Keith? Because I really can't hear you.
Sorry, my voice is going. It's basically I've put the wrong condition down. Instead of requiring them to incorporate, I would prefer to have due regard to the recommendations of the local authority, because at the end of the day, it is their operation. They know how they want to operate their business, and we should not unnecessarily interfere in that.
So I appreciate that change, and I'm happy with that change.
Take out incorporate and put have due regard to.
Yeah. So basically, what it, rather than the council being able to mandate, we need to incorporate. That's better. I think it's more reasonable.
Well, I think you said take out incorporate and have due regard to. So okay, you're both happy
so it needs
with that.
updated wording. Yeah.
Thank you.
But with the updated wording, we're happy with that. Thank you.
Number 44. Are you happy with our wording for residence conditions instead of your wording at 22? Not 22. Premises licence holder. It was 24 instead of 24.
Yeah, I'm very happy with this. Yes.
Could I?
Sorry, who's got a question?
I'm so sorry to make a point at this point.
Yes, go ahead.
We have had no acknowledgement of a meeting with Mr. Drummond, except for the last 2 days. These are normally posted on the fronts of the premises, and there's been nothing on Eclipse. So if there was to be a residents' meeting with him and whoever, it must be fully advertised, please.
Are you happy with the wording of this condition then? Will that satisfy that?
Well, providing that, that it is complied with, yes,
Well,
thank you.
It would be, I mean, just to make sure. Okay. So again, I don't want to accidentally breach a condition. So it would be good to get a list of which associations and so on should be included. That'd be really helpful. And it'd be good to have an agreed calendar in front of time, so we don't have to post notices. If we have a list of people we're meeting with and we agree a calendar, that should be sufficient, shouldn't it?
And the details of the proposed meeting you display on your window, so obviously people who are walking past can see as well.
Yeah,
You're happy with that, yeah?
Yeah, that's fine.
Number 45, are you happy with obviously the wording in black is Keith's wording, your wording is blue. Are you happy with Keith's wording in black?
I mean, in principle, yes, but in practice, it's a bit confusing because I don't know really what this means. So, for example, we've already had our architect work with an acoustic engineer. Does this mean that the Director of Transport and Regulatory Services could refuse our plan and make us do something completely different? Because that's how I kind of read this.
Keith, can you just clarify that?
Or does it mean they want to be
question,
consulted,
please?
or?
We would read your report and we would make comments on your report and highlight issues on the works that you are proposing to contain the sound inside the premises. But at the end of the day, they are quite standard works to insulate the building, and I wouldn't expect us to have any issues with what a good acoustic consultant would put forward to you. So I wouldn't think there'd be any issues with what you put forward to us.
Thank you.
Okay. I mean, so a second concern would be turnaround. So we've already finished all the internal removal of all the existing damaged parts of the building, and we're ready to do work. So if we were to submit a report, is there some time frame in which we can get a report? If it's going to take 2 or 3 months, it's going to cost us a lot of money. Is there some kind of turnaround time frame that we can agree on this? Because I know everyone's very busy and Christmas is coming up. So my main concern with this requirement is it potentially could delay our works by a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. Who knows?
I don't think time frames are referred to in the condition. I think Keith's condition is basically saying the works required to be carried out shall be completed to the written satisfaction of the council and maintained. And you've put the works required to be carried out to achieve compliance with the recommendations of that report shall be completed. So you're saying not to the written satisfaction of the council. You're just saying they shall be completed and maintained. I think that's the difference between the two. Are you sticking to your wording, or are you happy with the black wording with Keith?
My wording, because at the end of the day we need to have some sort of input into the sound insulation works taking place. We have got significant knowledge of the acoustics, and clearly if something has been missed, then we would wish that to be brought to their attention.
So you want it to the written satisfaction of the council?
I feel that that's important, that we continue to have that involvement.
I'm not trying to be difficult. Just from a practical point of view, I just don't see how this is workable, because it means that we have to get the council involved with our architects, our engineers, our planning, our structural engineering work. It's just not going to work, because this might require a dozen meetings over 2 weeks. Is Keith available for a dozen meetings over 2 weeks? I think the wording we have, which is, okay, the way I look at it is very simplistically, we have a requirement to meet the noise and nuisance levels of the building. So obviously we want to do works that make us meet those requirements so we don't bother people. What we're proposing is to submit our plans to the council, and the council can then say, oh, actually we'd like you to do some additional works here and there, but we can start works at least. The Keith's wording says that we have to submit it and wait to get approval until it's eventually maybe approved. Could take an unknown amount of time, could be an unlimited amount of works. So it's quite a different thing. It seems quite onerous compared to what we're proposing. I think our wording achieves the same objective, which is we're communicating with the council, we're giving the council all of our plans, the council can give us recommendations or say please do some additional works, and we can incorporate those. That's totally fine. Which is different from saying that the council has effectively a veto on our works and can stop everything until they have time to review it, which might be
But I suppose the
in
flip
January.
side is if it's not to the written satisfaction of the council, then that could be problematic as well. But I mean, I'd be interested to see what Keith has to say on that, please.
It's a standard style of acoustical works to a building. We have these works done in lots and lots of other premises in the borough. We've used this condition on a number of occasions, and we've never held up any works. The whole essence of the condition is to get you to look at all the transmission paths of sound from your premises to your neighbours. It's basically building a box within the box and ensuring that the sound is contained. It's lining walls and looking at glazing and roof emissions. And that's basically it. It's not a significant building, and any acoustic consultant who you employ will come up with all those goods very quickly, and you will find that we will find them acceptable.
So you would take over responsibility from building control?
I think this will be a matter for the councillors to decide ultimately. Thank you. Right, moving on to number 46. Can you look at my wording?
Before you move on, just one. Can all references to interim be deleted, please?
References to interim.
In that last condition. Thank you.
Interim Director of Transport, you mean? Number 46. So my understanding is there's obviously a front door to the premises, and there's obviously doors to the rear terraces, and presumably there are windows as well, or is it just doors?
Yeah, there are windows. So we're happy with this condition. In
my
general.
wording in red, you're talking about?
Yeah, we only had it at 9 p.m. That was because during the summer, you might want to have the windows open for like extra air circulation. So I think the 9 p.m. still makes sense. But in terms of keeping things shut, and also we've agreed to add an acoustic lobby. So rather than when the front door is opened, we are going to have a lobby that will contain the sound.
All right.
So we still think the 9 p.m. the 2100 hour condition is reasonable, and would rather have that.
Right, so you're saying, so the external doors and windows of the premises shall be kept closed except for immediate access and egress from, you're saying from 9 p.m. until the premises closes to the public, and at all times after 9 p.m. during the performance of live? So
Yes.
Keith, do you have any comments on that?
What I would say, what's the point in having air conditioning in a premises if you're then opening your doors and windows? At the end of the day, the only doors and windows will be open will be the doors onto the terrace at the second floor and the front door. So I don't honestly see that we need to restrict this to particular hours. I feel that this is something which the premises should have while the premises license is in operation.
Sorry, are you saying keep to your wording, or are you
Yes.
saying keep to my? You're saying keep to your wording
Yes.
instead of.
So we believe this is in line with other licenses. It's kind of standard wording, and we think it's reasonable. And so we'd like to keep the 9 p.m. in there.
Excuse me, can I just make a point? Air conditioning doesn't work if you have doors and windows open.
True.
So the idea of they can be opened for extra air circulation during the summer is just, a non-runner. So
Well, the idea is at certain times of year we won't have to use air conditioning because it's very expensive. We can have the doors open, windows open if it's midday and buildings have got 3 people in it. So some of these things are economic as well. I mean, obviously
I'm sorry, that then brings us back to noise and the escape of noise.
Yes, which is why it has
So
a limit on
I
it.
think that's why it should be as you drafted it, please.
9 p.m.
As Keith drafted it.
Right, let's move on to my final condition, number 53 on the last page. Are you happy to do litter patrols as per my wording in red? It's a pretty standard condition.
Can I endorse my support and probably all of that of residents, because Walton Street suffers from, and has done all the time I've been there, mice and rats and foxes. And any litter that's left then gets chewed and decimated up and down the street. So I think it's an excellent
Thank you.
condition.
Yeah, we're very happy with that
You're happy
condition
with
as
that,
well.
thank you.
Yeah, we want to make sure it's as clean as possible, so that's fine.
Thank you. Right, okay, so that's all the conditions discussed. Are there any other conditions or issues that have cropped up which anybody thinks should be covered by a condition? Thank you. In that case, I'm done. Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Do our licensing officers have anything to add?
No further comments. Thank you, Chair.
Governance officers?
No, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay. So, thank you, everyone. We have now reached the end of the meeting. Thank you all for attending today. The committee now has all the information needed, and we will retire to make our decision in a private session. We will not announce the decision today. Instead, the hearing will be closed. A summary determination will be sent to the parties within 5 working days of today's hearing, and then a full decision will follow as soon as possible thereafter. The time limit for appealing the decision will not commence until the full decision has been sent to the parties. Thank you for attending. The hearing is now closed. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On behalf of residents, can we say thank you to all of you for attending, and especially to the noise and nuisance team, the police, etc.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Yes, thank you very much, everybody.
Mm.